What's up, y'all? This is Mara Juno, and you might know me from World of Warcraft as Illyria Windrunner or the Walking Dead game as Krista, among a few others. And you're listening to the man, the legend, the Scott Clark, and the Gaming Outsider.
Hey there, Go listeners. My name is Logan, and I'm a 4th grader in Mr. Clark's class. On this week's episode, Mr. Clark, Zack, and CB welcome Brandon Smith, the creator of Final Fantasy Renaissance, to talk about all JRPGs. In the news, Microsoft finally gave us an update about all last week's rumors. Games discussed including Mario vs. Donkey Kong and Tomb Raider, Remastered 1 through 3. Mr. Clark also played my copy of Pikmin 4 on Switch. This is the Gaming Outsider.
Greetings, programs, and welcome to The Gaming Outsider, a video game podcast with a focus on our incredible community, which can be found at thegamingoutsider.com. We also have a community at facebook.com/groups/thegocast, and even a Discord server, and you can find a link for that in the show notes of this very episode. It is Sunday, February 18th. I'm your host, Scott Clark, and joining me are my good friends. First off, guy I know is super stoked by the results of the Super Bowl, Mr. Zack Parkerson.
Definitely. I think I might have been too busy playing a Shooty Shooty Bang Bang at the time.
I had this Chitty Chitty Bang Bang theme song stuck in my head for the entire week after that episode. And if you have no idea what we're talking about, go back to last week because it was hilarious.
Was it stuck in your head while you're playing your latest Schmacross game?
Yes, it was. It definitely was. Also joining us, the guy who's the newest Swiftie fan, Mr. Chris Behrensmeyer. What's up, man?
I mean, I was always a Swiftie.
People give her a lot of crap. I don't understand it. I enjoy her music. I don't like seeking out, but yeah.
I mean, she's no Miley Cyrus, but
ugh. Oh man, we're gonna have words. Alyssa's not going to be joining us this week. However, we do have a very special guest that I'm pleased to invite to the show. He was at R2V2. He is the maker of Final Fantasy Renaissance, which is a remake of the original Final Fantasy on Nintendo that he's created for PC. Gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Brandon Smith. How you doing, Brandon?
Hello, I'm doing very well. And Taylor Swift is an American treasure.
Dude, the whole internet getting upset about her and football and everything, it was just really hilarious this past year. But
well, the only thing more annoying than seeing all the pictures of Taylor Swift was seeing all the people complaining about seeing pictures of Taylor Swift.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do at the Super Bowl or during the Super Bowl is in the third quarter, go into social media and watch everybody just complain about the halftime show.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever likes it for some reason. Like if it's not, music you grew up with.
What about the silent majority, though? There's probably 90% of the people watching the Super Bowl are probably just fine with the halftime show.
Probably.
I was laughing more at the amount of people that forgot that Jermaine Dupri was a thing and thought that was CeeLo Green.
I don't know what a Jermaine Dupri is. Sounds like a some kind of dog, like a dog breed. A Jermaine Dupri.
God, I feel old.
Well, anyway, Brandon, it is awesome to have you here. And for everybody that's not met you, I know we've had you on. We had you on a Final Fantasy episode when we did a spoiler cast for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think we had you on. We talked about Final Fantasy games in general. I think for a Patreon episode. But for those that aren't familiar with what you're doing, can you kind of give everybody an idea of what Final Fantasy Renaissance is and what they can expect and how they can play it?
Yeah. So Final Fantasy Renaissance, like you said, is a recreation of the original Final Fantasy from the Nintendo Entertainment System, which came out originally in Japan in 1987. It wasn't released in the U.S. until 1990. And there were slight differences, translation obviously into English, and they tweaked a few things for the American audience. So Final Fantasy Renaissance, the one that I made, is based off of specifically the 1990 US version on the US NES. And what I've done with it is basically I rebuilt the entire game from the ground up in Unity, game development engine Unity. And I added a bunch of new features to it, such as new job classes that didn't exist in the original version of the game, which pretty much are all pulled from later games in the series. So I took a lot of inspiration from Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy III and even 11, online one, and took job classes from those games that were very popular and recreated them in some fashion so that they would work in Final Fantasy 1, that they would make sense in that kind of like older, really rigid turn-based system. And I fixed all of the bugs, all of the known bugs at least from the original game. There were a lot of really well-known bugs like spells that didn't work at all, things like that. There were enemy weaknesses that didn't work properly or kind of did the reverse of what they were supposed to do. So I fixed all of that stuff. So basically, all of the code for the game I wrote myself. What I basically didn't recreate from scratch was the art assets and the audio files, things like that. Because that's such an old game, those sort of things are really easy to find and download online. They're all over the place because people have reverse engineered this game for the 30-something years that it's been out. So basically just took all the pieces, put it together, and wrote the code to make it work. And I've been working on it for several years now. It's fully playable from start to finish. The game is complete, and I've added, I think I've added 10 new job classes on top of the original 6 that it came with so far.
Wow.
And I've still got a lot more I'd like to add to it. So that's kind of the state of the project right now. Is I'm slowly but surely adding new job classes and new features as I have time. I actually released version 2.0 not too long ago. It was the beginning of this year, actually, for New Year's. I had 2.0 out, and that added a bestiary to the game, so you can fill that bestiary as you defeat or capture monsters in the game, depending on the party that you have.
Gotta catch them all.
I saw that at R2V2.
Yes, yeah, I was showing an early version at R2V2, and I've added a lot since then. But the bestiary was there. The achievement system, I added an in-game achievement system. You can't play it through like Steam or anything like that to get those kind of achievements. It's not on any consoles, but there's an in-game achievement system just for fun. But yeah, you can play the game. Like I said, it's not available on major platforms because I can't officially release this since I don't own the rights to the Final Fantasy name or anything. So it's very much an unofficial remake of the game. But we've got, I want to say we're getting really close to like 7,000 members on my Discord server right now that are playing the game and enjoying it. And there's new people streaming it on YouTube all the time. So yeah, if you want to find Final Fantasy Renaissance, just Google it or go on YouTube and you'll see people playing it.
We'll definitely have a link to the Discord in the show notes for this episode. I got to tell you a story because I, for some reason, hadn't joined your Discord server until last week. And I finally joined it. And Chris can attest to this. Actually, Zach probably too. If you listen to last week's episode, we actually had to stop recording for a minute because Chris was like, Scott, I'm sorry. I keep hearing Discord going off. Throughout this episode, you need to mute that because I can hear it through the recording, and it was because I had joined your server and I was getting all the notifications. So you were blowing up, man. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Love seeing all the progress there. It's really really cool to see. Kevin, our producer, is the reason that we have you on the episode today because he has been hounding me for weeks to get you on the show so that we could get a chance to talk to you before you got too big for the Gaming Outsider.
Oh. That's awesome. Thanks, Kevin. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was driving that. But I told you previously, just in a message when you asked me to come on, I said, "Hey, I'm never going to be too big for you guys, so you don't have to worry about that." But
Hey,
don't worry, I don't feel like a celebrity.
I'm just happy I got into the Discord when it was still like a couple hundred members.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was around 250 members by the time I came out to R2V2 to see you guys and show the game out there. And I don't know, I couldn't say for certain if it was someone that saw the game at R2V2 that was responsible for it or not. But the server, my Discord server, blew up after a popular YouTube streamer named Pro Jared started playing the game and streaming himself playing it. I got like 1,000 new members overnight, and then it just kept growing from there. And it's just been a steady stream of a handful of people every hour. I think I get a few people at least every hour. But yeah, it was growing really big when he first streamed it, and I had asked how he found out about the game, and he mentioned one of his viewers or followers had been telling him that he should check it out, and I don't know if it was someone that I met at R2V2, but it was interesting timing that right after that, it was I don't know, a couple weeks, few weeks after R2V2, it started.
So
to blow
maybe we had a hand in it, is what you're saying.
Maybe. So thank you, just in case.
we're not going to take credit for that, man. You did all the hard work. We just put together an event. So that's really awesome. I'm very, very happy for you. I know you had an article on, I believe, Game Rant.
Yes.
Did an article on you?
Yes, that blew my mind. So yeah, that came out more recently, like a month ago. I was actually on vacation. I didn't have any internet access or anything like that for a solid week. And when I finally got back, I was on a cruise, and when we got back to shore, and I turned on my phone and everything, and I was sitting at dinner with my friends and my wife this one night, and I'm just catching up on notifications, and all of a sudden I saw it was actually Kevin who shared the link to the article on the Gaming Outsider Facebook page, and so I saw it there, and I was like, "What is this?" And I had to do a double take. I said, "Game Rant?" Like, that's huge. And it's a glowing article. It's fantastic. They said some really complimentary things, and I was just completely floored by it. So we'll see where it goes from there. So far, I haven't got any negative attention yet. Knock on wood. No one's sent me a cease and desist yet, but who knows? We'll see what happens.
I'm really curious how that works, because it's not like you're selling it.
Right.
It's something you're giving for free, and it's not like Nintendo or Square. Was even a Square game? I don't even remember.
Originally, yeah, it was Square. Before Square was SquareSoft and all that, but yeah, same
Right.
entity. I don't know the exact kind of like risk level that I'm walking into with this either, but that's why from the very beginning I've always been really careful to say wherever I'm advertising this game, not I shouldn't say advertising, but wherever I'm talking about the game, like on the Discord server, on the welcome page, or on my website, it very clearly states that this is a passion project. It's just for fun. It's a derivative work off of copyrighted source material that I don't own the rights to, and I am not accepting any money for this. So I've been really careful to be clear that I am not trying to profit off of this whatsoever. So I feel like the worst that is likely to happen is I'll get the basic cease and desist if they don't like what I'm doing or something, if they feel threatened by it. So
right.
But it
My
hasn't
understanding
happened yet.
legally is that you're fully protected as long as you don't charge.
I would think so.
Unless they're trying to do their own Final Fantasy 1 remake, then they might cease and desist you just to not have marketplace confusion or whatever.
Well, what's interesting is I've been working on this for so long. This predates the Pixel remasters, at least the start of this project does. And when the Pixel remasters came out, it was just, I think, very shortly before I released version 1.0 of this game, and basically said, "Hey, here it is, guys. It's all done and playable." And when I heard about the Pixel remasters, I was a little bit annoyed, honestly, when I heard Final Fantasy 1 was going to be remade and nicer pixel sprite graphics and everything. I said, "Well, that's kind of like what I'm doing. Does this mean that they're going to try to shut me down as soon as they find out about this because it's too close to the Pixel remaster?" But mine does a lot of different stuff than the Pixel remaster does. So they definitely stand apart as different games.
And on the opposite end of the cease and desist, you could get Sonic Mania, where they're like, "Hey, this is really cool. Like, do you want to let's just put it out?" You never know.
That has definitely crossed my mind. That's kind of the dream scenario. Is the owner of the copyright finds out about your work and says, "Hey, you know what? We don't want you to work on this anymore, but here's something else you can do for us." That's kind of
come work for us.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Do you have, if something like that presented itself and you got like a job offer to do this for a living, do you think you'd jump?
It's hard to say. I think it would just depend on the exact scenario and the details involved. I have a good job right now. I'm actually a software developer full time, just not doing games. And so I make good money, and that's something that I'm not looking to necessarily jump ship from, unless it was just a offer I couldn't refuse. But I'm a little bit leery about working for a major video game company because, as you guys are well aware, they can be cutthroat. They're laying people off, entire departments of people who have done nothing but their job amazingly well, and just because of business reasons, you could just be out of a job with practically no notice. So that kind of makes me hesitant to just say, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to accept a job with Square Enix or with some huge video game company." I don't know. I also just like to work by myself and kind of do things at my own pace. The indie game development style. So I don't know. I think the best scenario would be if I was, offered some sort of a consultant type of role where I could
Mm,
be, a part of a team, but I don't have to quit my day job. So,
there you go. Last question I've got for you, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds in this, but we've had developers on the show in the past that do what you do, and I never really get a chance to ask this question because I don't know them personally, like I know you. But can you give us like a quick synopsis? Like, what does it take to do something like this? Because I know nothing about programming or coding. I remember sitting and seeing you at R2V2 before the show, like putting in last lines of code and stuff, and it's just it's all completely over my head. But what does it take to put something like this together? How do you go about doing it without getting into actual coding? Like, can you explain it to me like I was 6?
yeah. Well, let me tell you about loops and data structures. No, so no, programming is definitely the foundation that I think is key. At least if you're if you're gonna be an indie developer, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything. With this particular project, I was fortunate that I very deliberately chose a game that already existed that was very well documented, so I didn't have to recreate the art and I didn't have to recreate audio and come up with the story and all that kind of stuff. So those pieces I was able to just borrow, like I said before. But the code was the piece I really had to do myself. And I think any indie game, you're going to have to do the lion's share of the actual core logic building yourself. So, and I mean, there's people that work on teams where you might have programmers that are focusing on that, and you have artists, and you have scene designers and level designers and all kinds of stuff, writers. So it just depends on kind of how you want to do it, if you want to work with other people or if you want to do it all yourself. But at least for me, I wanted to have full control over how things actually work mechanically in the game, and so you have to be a programmer, I think, to do that. So I would say that anyone that wants to get into it should definitely either take some classes, maybe. You could sign up for a basic course at a community college, or there's probably even some online courses you could take on programming. I can't remember what those websites are called that offer like very, very focused like programming instruction stuff. But there's a number of them out there. So I would start with something like that. C#, JavaScript, Python, those are all pretty popular as far as I know, even in game development. C++ even is, and that's a little bit of an older language, but those are all some of the ones I would look at. As far as being able to develop games just on your own with basic computer hardware and everything, Unity is what I use. There's also Unreal Engine. Godot is, I believe, a free game development platform that's I think kind of similar to Unity. I've heard it mentioned in comparison to Unity a few times, especially recently, going back to when Unity was in the news not too long ago for making those wild announcements about changes to their pricing structure and everything.
It's almost a dirty word now.
Yeah, they definitely got a bad rap, and I was watching that story pretty closely for a little while. I wasn't personally too concerned with it because, at least with this particular project, obviously I'm not making any money. I'm not planning to, so it doesn't really affect me. But I mean, in the future, if I make my next game in Unity, that's something I want to consider. Is am I going to get nickeled and dimed for releasing this? But yeah, Godot was one I had heard some people jump and ship onto. There's also one called Game Maker. I believe that's the correct name. That's another one of the free ones.
RPG Maker. I'm familiar with that.
RPG Maker as well. Yeah, that's a different one. But yeah, they've got a bunch of different versions of RPG Maker out there. But all of these you can use on PC. Some of them you can use on Mac. I actually develop on a Mac using Unity. And it's completely free to use, at least currently, until you release a game and I think make over a certain amount of money or get over a certain amount of installs. It's always been that way, even before Unity announced that they were potentially changing their pricing structure. But you can develop for free in a lot of these platforms, and it's when you get to the point of releasing it and actually publishing it and stuff like that, then there's some sort of pricing models and revenue models that they have set up. But I've never had to get that far and worry about it yet, so I can't really speak to that part of it.
No, that's okay. But like when you're actually putting this together, are you? I know you said you downloaded the assets, because they're kind of all over the place. But did you have to recreate like those sprites and the maps and everything, pixel by pixel, and then piece it together like a puzzle? Like, how do you go about doing that? I mean, is it exactly what it sounds, just square by square, putting things together until it looks like what it does?
Somewhat, and it depends on how you want to build a game. The way that I did it with this particular project with Final Fantasy Renaissance was I tried to find the maps from the game, like all of the dungeon maps. So, you've got, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy 1, I'm going to get into the weeds a tiny bit, but like the Marsh Cave is like the first really big dungeon in that game that has multiple levels. You've got 3 levels deep in that dungeon. And I was able to find people who had basically ripped the images off of the original NES cart. There's programs where you can basically data mine that stuff and pull out all the art assets and get them into files like JPEG files and PNGs and stuff like that on a computer. So people had done that, and I'm not sure if they got them as large image files originally as complete maps or if they had to stitch them together themselves, but I was able to download entire floors of the dungeon, like the entire map for one floor of the dungeon is one image file. So for that particular dungeon, the Marsh Cave, I've got at least 3 different image files where each one is an entire floor. So I didn't have to put together each tile of the map or each pixel of the map and recreate it at that, like to that level of granularity. But I did have to modify some of the maps and other art assets as well. So a lot of the sprites in the game had little imperfections here and there where either, I don't know if it happened from someone uploading it or if they had to recreate them themselves and they made a mistake. But I've come across a lot of things where I had to touch up the art assets themselves. But again, going back to the map creation specifically, what a lot of games do, which I think is actually a more efficient way of doing it, especially when the game is running, doesn't use as much memory this way. If you build your maps tile by tile kind of at runtime, then you have smaller image files that the game has to store that you can then just basically duplicate in a sense at runtime as needed. So if you've got, like a bush, this would be maybe more in a platformer, but if you had like a art asset of a bush and it's the same bush, it looks identical everywhere it shows up in that level, you can basically
like in the original Mario Brothers.
Yeah, Mario Brothers is a great example. Yeah, all
the
of
clouds
those
and the bushes were the exact same thing.
Yes, all of those identical. Oh yeah, the clouds and the bushes. So all of those essentially identical art assets, you only have one actual image file for that can be duplicated throughout as needed. I didn't quite do it that way with this game just because I didn't want to recreate everything tile by tile. It would just have been a massive amount of work, and maybe I should have because it might run a little bit more efficiently, but I went a slightly different route and I just used large image files. And that's...
plus you don't have a memory issue like you did back on the NES card days, right?
Yes, that is true. That is true. Yeah. So that helped. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's a lot of different ways to build games.
Well, congrats on all the success, man. I wish you all the best, and I hope you get some big things out of it because it's a really cool project, and I'm proud to know you, man. It's really good.
Thank you.
So we want to go into the games that we've been catching up on. I have to assume that you've been playing some kind of Japanese role playing games, just because that seems like your MO. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of time to play games lately because of this, because of always working on Final Fantasy Renaissance. So that's one of the things that you don't hear, I think, people talk about as much when everyone wants to make games. If you play games, I think at some point you've thought, oh, it'd be great if I could be a game developer and I could just make games for a living or play games for a living. The downside is you don't have a lot of time to do both. So it's kind of a catch-22. When I'm playing games, it makes me want to make games, and when I'm making games, it makes me want to play games, and I don't have time to do both.
I hear you.
But I have been spending a decent amount of time lately playing Fire Emblem Engage. I had a buddy get that for me for my birthday last year, and I finally got around to cracking it open, and I'm enjoying that quite a bit.
Nice. I know Alyssa was playing that for a while too, and she enjoyed it. So
Is it the one where you summon old Fire Emblem characters?
Yes,
Okay.
which is it's interesting for me because this is my first Fire Emblem game, and my friend that got me the game specifically chose this one because it references all of the older games, at least in the sense that you get to kind of meet those main characters from each of the prior games and kind of get a glimpse into who they were and what they're all about. So yeah, I get to meet all these characters now, and then if I want to dive into any of the older Fire Emblem games, I'll kind of see some familiar faces. So that's cool.
nice. Anything else you've been playing?
The only other thing I've had time for recently was a few weeks ago or so. I finally played through the intermission for Final Fantasy VII Remake. That bonus episode with Yuffie. Finally got a chance to play through that in preparation for FF7 Rebirth, which I'm looking forward to. So
Yeah, I think we all are.
How'd you like the Yuffie stuff?
I liked it. It was a little short, which is fine. I wasn't looking to get into a big, huge thing again at that time, but it was pretty cool. I like Yuffie as a character. She's actually always been one of my favorite party members in FF7 for whatever reason.
Sorry to hear that.
I heard you talking about her on a previous episode because you played through it too. I actually really like her. I like characters like that. I like the youthful, spunky, lots of energy kind of characters. So she's a lot of fun, and she played pretty fun too. I will say that I'm hoping that when Rebirth comes out, I get better at the battle system, because every time I've dived into the FF7 remake stuff, like when I first played the game and was learning how this new combat system worked, and then when I jumped into Yuffie's thing, I was just getting my butt kicked.
You're used to fully turn-based, huh?
I am definitely used to fully turn-based. I like taking time to plan things out, so it is a little different.
How did you feel about the surprising amount of Dirge of Cerberus story?
I was surprised by that. I would say I was pleasantly surprised by it to a point, just because I enjoyed Dirge of Cerberus, and I like that there's all this depth to what's going on in Midgar at this point in time that they're not ignoring in the remake, which is really cool. So it kind of brings all that stuff into, it was already canon, I think, before, but it makes it feel even more official to have it weaved into the proper FF7 story. I was a little surprised about how deep they went into some of that Dirge of Cerberus stuff, like the last boss fight and everything. I was like, okay, I was not expecting this at all.
Right, yeah, it was very, very surprising. But yeah, it seems like they're trying to roll all of the, what do they get, he had a project name for all that extra FF7 stuff. I can't remember it, but it seems like it's all getting rolled back in.
Yeah.
So.
Like the FF7 extended universe or something.
Right, yeah.
Brandon, did you get a chance to play the demo for Rebirth?
I did not. I don't play a lot of demos, especially if it's games that I know I'm planning to play. I did play the demo for the FF7 remake before it came out, just because I knew that it was literally the exact beginning of the game and would just transfer directly into the full game when it came out. This one, I wasn't as certain about that, because I read about it and it says it's the Nibel reactor section of the flashback thing that happens when you get to the first town after Midgar. But I wasn't 100% sure if that meant that you see the characters, like you play them getting to that first town first and then go into that, or if they're kind of jumping you a tiny bit ahead for the demo. And I didn't want to skip anything when the game comes out. I'd rather just play through, from the very, very beginning and not skip over the demo section. So
Scott bullied me into playing it.
Really to twist his arm.
You talk about how good it was and get extra content or whatever. It is just a Nibelheim flashback though, and I guess it will ask you if you want to skip that when you get to it in the Rebirth.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to, because just for the story flow of it, I think it makes sense to play through it at the point where you're supposed to. But then if I already played through it, I would be reluctant to want to go through all the same stuff again. So I said,
No,
I'm just going to wait and just play through it once when it comes out.
I'm certainly going to replay the section just to watch all of the Cloud and Sephiroth flirting again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Boy.
They're giving the shippers a lot of fodder in the demo.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go to Chris. What have you been playing, man?
Still banging away at Baldur's Gate. I want to get it
The
off
first
my
one?
heart. No, not
I
Baldur's
know.
Gate 3. I've
Baldur's
played.
Gate?
Shh. Listen up, Mando. So yeah, I mean, I've beat Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. So, but 3, I have a feeling I'm getting very close to the end. I traded notes with Kevin over some things because, apparently I haven't just missed Asterion entirely. I've missed another character entirely.
Yeah, Gale.
Yep. Didn't. He's like, yeah, what about Gale? And I'm like, I have no idea who that is.
How did you not see him? You can't even do the fast travel without meeting that character, I thought.
Yeah, you
thought.
can.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
But, dude, I'm actually loving all the stuff in Baldur's Gate. Like the fact that you could just walk up to anybody, just talk to them, and sometimes, look, additional missions.
I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 as well, and I am falling deeper and deeper in love with this game every time I play it. It is a fascinating experience, and this is making me want to go back and try to play other games from Larian, like I can't remember what it's called now.
Divinity?
The name is Divinity Original Sin 2. Apparently it's supposed to be really good, but
Yeah.
I also feel like it's going to be a step back in terms of like this is what everybody wanted because it's supposed to be 5e, and I don't know, but there are just so many moments, even just normal battle encounters that we're going to be talking about JRPGs this episode, right? You know, when you have a normal encounter with enemies, like just whatever, you'll have a story from it. Something interesting. I mean, not necessarily an in-game story, but you'll have a water cooler moment to be able to share with somebody from just a random encounter. There's just so many different ways that everything can play out. It is just it's almost an interesting social experiment.
Oh yeah.
Because I played with my Borderlands group this weekend. All 4 of us now own the game, and we decided to play it together. We want to play through the campaign with 4 people, which is interesting because it always focuses around one person. One person is kind of the decision maker, and everybody else are just like side characters. And I'm learning that as I'm going through this now from the second time, the intro, that a tiny little thing vastly changes the story, as we talked about last week. Or you've got 2 main characters that are like on the artwork that you just have never encountered, which is just bizarre to me. But we decided to make the decision because we kind of figured we weren't going to do a lot of the side content because we don't have any of the pre-made characters in our party because there's 4 of us. You know what I mean? So the way the game works is one of those characters that the game makes for you are always in your party if you're playing by yourself, or 3 of them are in your party if you're playing by yourself. That's not the case. So since they're just always hanging out in camp, it doesn't really make any sense to do all the side quests and stuff. So we're just kind of mainlining the story. And so we're missing a lot of stuff, but I'm doing all of that stuff in my campaign with Kevin.
Yeah.
And it is fascinating. I got to tell one story, and I'm going to give a spoiler alert. It's not a main story thing. This is just a side thing. We had some people that said they like me giving little bits and pieces of information. I had something that happened today in my 7 or 8 hour session that I did with Kevin this morning. I came across this character that wound up being a priest for the god of pain. Do you know what I'm talking about, CB?
Yeah.
And this guy invites me to be a disciple, basically, of this priestess, or of this god.
Sounds
And,
kinky so far.
Do you happen to be in a cave?
Yes.
Okay, I know exactly who you're talking
Yeah.
about. I know exactly where you are. And I know exactly how I played that out.
Oh, I'm going to tell you how I played it out, because I decided I was just going to roll with it. I mean, Kevin was kind of nudging me towards that. Kevin is really good about not giving any story things away or helping me. He wants me to just experience the story in my way and then him react to it. So if I do something dumb, he's just like, oh, that's just the way it is. And it's just kind of awesome. But every once in a while, he gives me a little nugget of something and say, maybe you should do this. And in this case, he did, and he nudged me to go forward with this. So this priest or whatever says, "Okay, you need to be a part of this. I want you to turn around and face the wall." And I was like, "Okay." And so I turn around and face the wall, stand still, and he attacks me. And then you have the option to say, "Okay, that's enough," or "I'm done," or ask for more. I asked for more,
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 times,
As you
and
do.
yeah. And I mean, it obviously damaged my character, didn't kill my character, and it actually gave me a bonus. Like I now have this deal where I get a +2 on attack rolls if my HP is below 30% or
Aw,
something like
that's
that,
cool.
which is really cool. But then the conversation when it's done, and he's like, "Well, you could be the priestess yourself, and all this, and also I rather enjoyed that, so thank you." And it was just like. It's moments like that, things that are happening that are just so much fun, and they seem random, but they're clearly not. There's so much to do in this game. I'm looking forward to Sunday mornings to play this game. So
I'll give you one hint at what I did.
okay,
I'm giving you. Well, okay. I want you to take a guess at what I did.
Say, here's the
I'm
hint. I'm not giving you one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Here, I don't even think you need a hint. You just killed him. Like you just like
Murder ball.
yeah, you just kill everything in our.
This
D&D
is what
campaign,
happens
so.
when you're like, I'm going to take a bard and give him plate mail and spec into wizardry.
There you go. There you go.
Because nothing's better than a bard who can cast fireball.
The really interesting thing for me with this game is that I did not understand what Kevin was talking about in letting me do my story when he already knew what happened in his story, and he's just, like I said, just you do what you do, and whatever happens, happens. I didn't get that until I started playing with my group, and we kind of let Christina be the decision maker. And it was so much fun just to see what somebody else does and see what happens, and comparing it to what you did. It is a blast.
The permutations of this game are insane.
It makes those like Heavy Rain and those kind of games look like child's play in comparison. For instance, you know, at the
son.
yeah, remember at the very beginning of the game when you first encounter the little brain creatures?
Yeah.
Like you, there's
Murder.
Yes, she chose to harm this thing, and I don't know if you know how you harm. She pulls it out and sticks her thumb in it, like just jams her thumb in and out of this brain, and then now those guys are enemies for the rest of that mission. Which they were companions in my mission, like they were like my sidekick characters. It's just really fun.
Extra
like that,
XP, son.
yes, exactly.
Though,
So
I after you get done with Baldur's Gate 3, I really want you to go back and either play Baldur's Gate 2 or Sacred.
Okay, I know Sacred was on Xbox, or Sacred 2 was on Xbox.
Both of them were.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Anyway, we gotta move on because I can talk about Baldur's Gate
also
all day.
Needed some retro love in my life, so I've been busting out Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2.
Oh, that's the best one,
dude. Something about that trench run. I could just play that mission over and over and over.
Nice.
That's the GameCube one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rogue Leader, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Squadron 2 Rogue Leader?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then 3 is Rebel Strike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's where they make you get out of the planes every now and again.
That's
awful.
Right.
Rebel Assault 2.
No, they did it in Rebel Strike.
Yeah,
because I remember you had to climb
up. It's been a hot minute
the
since I've played 3.
You had to climb up an AT-AT
yeah,
walker
as Luke,
and,
right? And
yep.
cut it up from the inside.
Yep. No, you're right.
Yeah,
well,
that was the only cool moment of getting out of the vehicles in that game.
I was thinking the Rebel Assault 2 where you have to get out and they have those like it's almost like one of the arcade shooters where you're like positioned, duck behind things, shoot out.
Oh
yeah,
position.
Dude, oh god, those were not good, huh? Were they?
Some of them were actually pretty fun, but it's definitely a blast from the past for those too.
Yeah. What about you, Zach?
Well, speaking of retro, played more of the Solitaire Conspiracy. You know, Solitaire. That doesn't get more retro than that. I got the Platinum Trophy in this game. I think it is Bithell Games' only miss for me.
Oh, really?
Just wasn't that fun. The storyline was not very engaging, and I really wanted it to be, doing these little spy missions, but you're hacking through solitaire or whatever. Nice, fun, goofy setup. But the main actor who's playing your buddy, who I said, boy, it wouldn't be crazy if he turned out to be the villain. Spoiler, he's the villain.
Yeah.
But just trying to see internet personality Greg Miller try to be an intimidating tough guy villain, it's pretty tough to watch.
Yeah.
It's some pretty wretched acting.
About as menacing as a Backstreet Boy.
Yeah, well, they might be more so. And I want to say, like, it seemed like all of these performances were all captured over Zoom or something, so I guess that's probably a little awkward, but boy, that was rough. But the game itself is just kind of like, it's just kind of solitaire but worse. Because each of the suits have their little special powers. It might be fun in like a party setting, but if you're just, it's not the right way to play solitaire.
That's too bad.
Well,
The other one I talked
isn't
about
the right
last
way
week.
to play solitaire to play it alone, though?
Touche. But the way this is set up is like, every suit's got a weird power associated with it, and I don't know. It didn't hit for me. I'm sure other people would love it. I guess I got the platinum though, so how about that? All right, I gave it its due.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to take the JRPG episode as a chance to talk about The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky SC, which I started playing at the end of last year. This is my bedtime game that I play on my PSP. But this is the first game was, I think I described it as just kind of cozy. But here in the second one, it has mostly been cozy, but now it's really starting to heat up, and it's getting very exciting. And it is really cool going through the same cities that you went through in the first game, and kind of seeing what all the characters are up to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm finding myself enjoying this quite a lot. It's also really nice to play a JRPG where the stakes are, I'm trying to protect this. There's like a non-aggression treaty that these 3 different countries are trying to sign, and somebody's trying to disrupt the conference. And like, that's your goal. This is just make sure that the conference goes off without a hitch. It's just
interesting.
Quite a bit different than, the entity of death itself is coming to claim everything or whatever.
We're going to fight God.
Right, I have not fought God with the power of friendship yet. Almost
Give
2
it
games
time.
into the series. Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, right? It's got to happen eventually. But it's cool to play a JRPG with different stakes. And the combat is just so fun in this game. It's outrageously fun. But then I heard you guys talk last week about Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden.
You were stoked for this game.
Right, and you were confused, I heard, via the podcast last week. About why Alyssa and I were excited. And I'll tell you, I was excited because it's what we've always talked about wanting. More mid-budget game, a brand new IP, fresh idea. So it's just something that increasingly rare in this industry. So
That makes sense.
It was exciting to go in there, and it's good. It's not great. Solving the ghost crimes with your ghost wife is a lot of fun, and and it takes a lot of turns, and it's fun weighing the moral decision of like, should I, is the human to blame, is the ghost to blame, or was it a terrible accident? And so doing the little investigations is fun. It's a bit LA noirish in that way, where you're following the set of clues and getting to the bottom of things, but the combat is oof.
Rough?
Yeah, it is rough, and I wouldn't care so much because that's not really what I'm here for the game for, obviously. But there's just so much combat, like a shocking degree of it, which I wouldn't have expected in this kind of investigation game anyway. So the fact that there's so much is really startling. But the exploration counterpoint is really fun because I did not know this game was a gear gated one.
Oh,
going into it,
I didn't know that either.
And you don't get a lot of. I feel like 3D gear gated games are somewhat rare.
You mean it didn't say gear gated on the box?
It should have, right? It would be way better than Metroidvania, whatever the hell that means. But I do like the game. It is so nice. It's only the second game I can think of where the couple starts off already together.
Right.
So that's really nice. They just are in love. How quaint. And the story setup is exciting, and there's already been a few hard decisions. So I am definitely enjoying it. I'm just I am surprised at how much combat there is.
That's too bad.
Yeah. But it's not the worst thing. But the most exciting thing I've been playing if you remember when Persona 3 Reload was coming out, I was telling you, Scott, I'm like, no, I'm not going to play it right away. I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to wait until after this huge February and after FF7 Rebirth. I don't want to start this game too early. That was a lie. I completely lied. I completely failed myself and got Persona 3 Reload.
Yeah, you got to finish it by February 29th now.
Well, that's just not going to happen. It's straight up not. This is my fourth time going through Persona 3, and it's just still so much fun.
Yeah.
Just the incredible, the Persona setup, or at least in 3, is you're a high school kid climbing this tower full of demons, basically 250 floors. In the original PS2 game, it was 250 floors of the same looking rooms.
Oh my
Just
God.
like they would change the background color every now and again. But at least here in Reload, they change up the backgrounds every now and then. So that's pretty exciting. But the combat of Persona has always been so much fun, where the turn-based RPG setup. But if you exploit an enemy's weakness, you get a bonus turn, so you can hit them again. Or if you knock down all of the enemies with their weaknesses before they can get back up, you get to do an all-out attack, which is massive damage. So it's just kind of this fun, quick little puzzle you can solve. But it's a ton of fun exploiting those weaknesses. And here in Persona 3 Reload, you can pass off your turn, which I guess is something they introduced in Persona 5. So you can really try to figure out the enemy's weaknesses, and there's always such a constant variety of enemies, so you never get to rest on your laurels too much about the enemy weaknesses. So you're just constantly engaged, and it's always got those upbeat the soundtracks happening in the background while you're battling. You're killing demons with sweet rap music. It's just a lot of fun, and the presentation's very exciting, and it's really a lot of fun. And is there more striking a visual image than a bunch of teenagers shooting themselves in the head to get out their demons?
I'm surprised that still made the cut. I mean, I know you can't pull that out of. That would be really hard to pull out of that game.
I wouldn't. I would not play a remake if it didn't have that. But it's funny to me that how it's just kind of not controversial. No one seems to care.
Yeah,
but that seems way worse than anything Rockstar's ever put in a game.
Yeah,
But and then the excitement of Persona is these social links that feed into, because your social links mean your personas get stronger. So you're hanging out with these high school kids to make sure you're stronger in battle, and everything kind of flows together. You're constantly getting a feedback loop of progress, and it's just it's hard to put down because it's always got let me just do this one more thing and then I'll stop playing.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of how Fire Emblem has been for me, because it kind of has a similar mechanic where you're building bonds and relationships with your party members, and that affects kind of some bonuses you get during battle. So you're kind of encouraged to want to do things with all of them.
Yeah, I think that's a really neat mechanic. Here, replaying Persona 3 now at 33, though, or it could just be my state of mind right now. I don't know. But it's a lot harder to care about these high school problems.
I will say, every time you talk about Persona, it makes me want to play it. I have all of them. I've just never played any of them. They're
fun. I mean, 3 is my favorite one. So I would say Reload would be a good place to start.
No, but got to start on the PS1 with the OG.
I would not recommend that. But in the school of remakes, this is kind of like Dead Space to me, where I don't really feel like you need the original anymore.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Unlike a Resident Evil 4, where they kind of live alongside one another. So, I mean, dude, Persona 3 Reload, if you're into JRPGs, or just play it. It's very, very good.
Nice. It's on my list, but I also own Persona 5, and I've played about an hour of it. Enjoyed it. Just never got back to it.
Well, Reload's on Game Pass.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have not played any of the Persona games, but they do look interesting. I'd like
to
check them out at some point.
I got to tell you guys about a couple games I played this week. The first one of my students, you actually heard his voice in the intro for this episode. His name is Logan. He's a 4th grader in my class, and he came to me at school and said, Mr. Clark, I got Pikmin 4 for Christmas, and I just finished it. Would you please play it and talk about it on your podcast? So I said, sure. So I took this copy home, and I played it. I've had it for a couple weeks, and I didn't get a chance to play it till this week, and I did. I haven't played a Pikmin game since the original Pikmin, and I kind of had fun with it, but I just didn't super get into it. Never played 2, never played 3, and decided to give this one a shot, and it's very charming. I don't know if have you guys played Pikmin?
No. For a long time.
So now that you guys probably aren't familiar with, well, CB might be, but for those of you that aren't familiar with how the game works, in this one, the game starts from the perspective of the same character from the first Pikmin games. He crash lands on this space station, but instead of you playing it,
Yeah.
what's his name?
Olimar,
Yeah,
right?
Olimar. Yeah. Instead of you playing as him, you are playing as a member of the rescue squad that's coming to rescue him instead. The first rescue squad also crashes, so you are like this extra guy that comes in to rescue the rescue squad and rescue Olimar. And you discover these Pikmin characters who love to carry things, and it's. I'm gonna make a weird comparison, but it reminds me of Katamari Damacy a little bit in that game you start out as this tiny little thing, and you gradually pick things up, and then you're able to pick up bigger things. That's kind of like what this is, in that the Pikmin, the things that you pick up, you only have like one or up to like 5 or whatever. And they can carry this thing and bring it back to your base, and then you get more Pikmin, and then they can go and pick up bigger things as you start growing more and more Pikmin. So that's kind of like the main loop of this game, but it's a little bit more puzzle oriented than I was expecting. My only frustration with this game is the first hour I played this, I did not like it because the game is so slow paced, and it's done intentionally because it's obviously geared towards kids. They want them to be able to figure it out, and the mechanics are very different than any other game that you've ever played. If it weren't for Logan, I would have put this game down after that first hour. I kept pushing and pushing and pushing because he wanted me to talk about it so much and kept talking about it. I really am digging it now because it gets deeper and deeper, and you have lots of upgrades, and you get a pet that you get to feed, and so people like that. It's a very cute game. I don't know if I'm going to see it all the way through, but I am glad I played it. But I'm gonna return it to him probably here this next week. But it's got Nintendo all over it in terms of tone and quality, and it's a cute game, very whimsical, cute game.
Don't worry, Logan. I'll loan him my copy so he can continue playing.
I didn't know you had a copy of it, so I didn't realize I had to borrow it from a
CB
fourth
has
grader,
all of the games.
Right?
Yeah, right. And just so everybody's aware, I did not just take this game from this kid. I actually gave him a game to play as well.
What'd you give him?
I gave him the
Custer's
remake
Revenge.
of Custer's Revenge.
Oh my god.
No, I gave him the remake of Link's Awakening. He'd never played that before, and he's really enjoying it. So
No,
Pretty good game.
Brandon, you're wrong. He gave him Senran Kagura.
oh my goodness,
Leisure Suit Larry.
you know he's listening to this, and he's gonna go Google
Yeah.
that now. So
Well,
stop it.
List a
Senran
few
Kagura.
more.
Both of those are tamer than the original game mentioned.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, don't say it again.
I'm trying not to.
Another game I checked out, I heard some people talking about it in our Discord about Brotato, which is on Game Pass, so I downloaded that this afternoon and played that. It is what was the term we came up with for vampire-like games last week? I don't remember.
Auto shooter?
Auto shooters?
Spinny Survivor.
Spinning. This is very much in that vein. The difference here is that it is an arena. Like, you have borders. There's walls, so you can't just go anywhere like you can in Vampire Survivors. And it's wave based, so you're more or less trying to survive a wave. They start out like 30-second waves, and the I don't know what they drop that you're collecting to upgrade, but the stuff that you pick up doubles as level up currency and as money. So if you collect it while it's on the map before the wave is done, it goes towards leveling up your character. If you and then after the wave is over, it just sucks it all up to your character, and then you go to the next screen to do your upgrades and whatnot. And then when you do that, it's for currency to actually purchase for upgrades. So it's kind of an interesting way you don't have to pick up every little thing, but it still does you good at the end of it, if that makes sense.
That's pretty cool that it's not just lost then if you don't pick it up. Like most games, if you're
Right.
not meticulously running around like a crazy person picking up all the little shards or whatever drop, then they're just
Yeah.
gone. That's kind of a neat counterbalance.
Yeah. And the upgrades are fun too. This is a very cute looking game. Like, it reminds me of oh my goodness, Everybody Saves the World that I played last year. It's got that cartoony, cel shaded artwork to it. And some of the upgrades that you can get are weapons, and you can have up to 6 weapons at one time. And we're talking as rudimentary as sticks and bones to machine guns and shotguns and everything. So, and then, your upgrades are, increased melee damage or increased range damage. And It's just kind of it's a lot of fun and very addicting, and it's got that screen like in Binding of Isaac with all the unlocks. You know, when you just look at it and it's just like this massive page of just empty blanks, and you slowly start filling in the dots.
Does it have more or less poop?
I have not seen any poop yet.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then the last game I played, just because it was on sale on Switch for $2, I picked up another copy of Donut County just because I wanted to have that. That game is so good. I haven't played it since it originally launched, and I forgot that game had a story, which is
raccoons, man, raccoons.
It's just bizarre to me. But if you haven't played Donut County and you can find it cheap, it is seriously an incredibly satisfying game. Going back to Katamari Damacy, you start out as a tiny hole in the ground, and you move around the hole and drop things into it. And every time you drop an item into the hole gets bigger, and then you're able to get bigger items into the hole until you're dropping houses and skyscrapers and things into the hole. And it's very, very satisfying. Super simple. You literally just do the stick, and can't recommend it enough. So anyway, that's what I've been checking out. Let's go ahead now and jump into the week's news. A couple of new trailers to talk about. First off, Epic Quest Party. It released on Steam this past week. I know it's not upcoming, it's already out, but it still looked pretty interesting. Crimson is a a metal-based rhythm platformer on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC coming March 21st. And then we got a second transformation trailer for Princess Peach Showtime, which releases on March 22nd. In news, Phil Spencer finally answered some questions about last week's massive rumors. A Mandalorian game is in development from Respawn. The Switch successor isn't coming as early as expected, and Lara could be going back to her classic look in the next Tomb Raider trilogy. Brandon, you are a special guest, so you get to pick the first story we're going to talk about.
I guess we'll go with the Mandalorian game. That sounds interesting. I was a big fan of Jedi Fallen Order when that came out. That was Respawn. Did that.
Mm-hmm.
Jedi Survivor, not as much, but still solid game. Yeah, I'd like to see what they do with the Mandalorian game. I think their games are very polished, if nothing else. I am curious, though. I think it says here somewhere, it takes place. This is going to take place during a time when the Empire is ruling the galaxy. So that predates the Mandalorian TV show that we got on Disney Plus. Right. I'm wondering, does this follow the same Mandalorian, Din Djarin? Is this a different Mandalorian? Are you playing, a team of characters? I'm curious exactly what that's going to entail, and does this mean we're getting Siege of Mandalore kind of era stuff, like the end of the Mandalorian kind of, empire or something, or does this take place before that? So the Empire's there, but they haven't quite started coming after him yet. I'm just curious about exactly where this is going to fall and what it's going to entail.
I have a feeling this game is going to end with the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Basically Siege of Mandalore, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's going to be the same. I don't think it's going to be Din Djarin, because like right here, it's like jetpack will be a big part of it. Like he doesn't get his first jetpack until in the show.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm excited to go bounty hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
How do you feel about it being in first person? Because I know we had a lot of people complaining about Indiana Jones being in first person, but
I don't mind first person.
No? Okay.
I won't get to see his face then.
Yeah. Oh no, they'll do a Metroid Prime.
Maybe we'll see. Oh, it'd be great if it's first person, but it's like Doom. So you got like the little face down in the bottom, and it's like looking left and right, but it's wearing a helmet the whole time, so you can't see its expressions anyway. It'd be awesome.
There you go.
The helmet will just get more dented as you lose health.
Yeah, there you go.
This one's very early development, though. They even said it's at least a year, if not 2 years away. Very fast paced. It's funny you mentioned Doom, because this health regeneration upon enemy kills felt very Doom-like to me. And I think Zack would appreciate this. It's not going to be open world. It's going to have linear levels across multiple planets. So you just, it's almost like the Mandalorian in a boomer shooter.
Probably better for storytelling.
I mean, that's the part I'm most excited about.
Mm-hmm.
That it's linear FPS from Respawn. I don't care about the Mandalorian, like, at all.
Yeah.
So I'm burning the hell out on that. And if I see Grogu, if I can't kill Grogu, I'm really not interested.
Well, if this comes, before the Mandalorian storyline, there will be no Grogu, right?
Well, he'll be around as long as it's within 50 years, right? He's 50 years old.
As CB was pointing out, if it has a jetpack, then it has to be after the show,
or it has to be a different Mandalorian.
Or a different Mandalorian, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Because the show doesn't take place until after the Empire falls.
Yeah, the Empire's just fallen.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So I guess it would have to be a different Mandalorian.
Yeah. All right, CB, what story would you like to talk about?
Who had Switch releasing as their predictions for the year?
I don't remember.
Because I know somebody did.
Was it me?
I don't know.
I feel like that was Grant, but I could be wrong.
Well, Grant, it was just more Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Nintendo's come out, and originally it was playing the Switch successor, because they make sure in the article that I read, they're like, stop calling it the Switch 2, like that's not going to be its name. Won't come out. It was originally planned to come out this year, however, at its earliest now will be March 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Which I do agree with what I've been reading, that there will probably be a significant dry spell, because anything major now will more than likely get pushed to the new platform.
Mm-hmm. Or released simultaneously on the Switch and whatever the successor is called.
Yeah. Ooh, like that's gonna be interesting, because if do you think Nintendo will finally Nintendo will be the first to make the jump to go like 100% digital?
No, there's no way.
No, because Switch physical sales are higher than either PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah, there's no way.
And you have to think that they're in Japan, and most Switch games in Japan are still physical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for some reason here we don't believe it.
I do not understand it.
Yeah, I don't either. So I'm really curious to see what this iteration of like Nintendo's next generation is finally going to be. Like, are they going to go back to like an actual physical console, or are they going to continue to stick with a handheld style console? So I'm actually starting to get excited for it.
I think stepping away from the handheld thing is going to be a huge mistake. That is that's why that thing sold so well, is because you could play it on your TV or play it on the go.
Right, and it created a revolution, right? That's the only reason we have a Steam Deck or a PlayStation Portal or a ROG Ally is because of the Switch.
Unintended. Mm-hmm. Revolution.
Yeah.
That was the code name for the Switch, wasn't it?
I think
that was the Wii.
GameCube.
That was the Wii.
Yeah. The GameCube was the Dolphin.
Sorry, my joke failed.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because the Wii was going to revolutionize how you played video games, and it sure did.
For a minute.
I don't know though, like, because Nintendo likes to, I guess, buck the trend and kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, but you're not going to buck the trend in a way that was already working like gangbusters.
Well, they have done that many times.
No, yeah,
but
like you can't just bank on like Nintendo's going to make another handheld console. Like they could be like, you know what, you can only play this with your hands and a TV,
like a baby toy.
You normally can't predict Nintendo. The only reason I assume that this will just be a straight up Switch 2, a more powerful Switch, is because they're expanding the horizons into multimedia, and that feels like the time you want to play it safe.
Yep, I agree, and I think that no matter what they put out, if they play it safe, it's going to sell like crazy, because the Switch is still selling like crazy.
That's why like they don't need to put it out this year.
Yeah.
The internet is clamoring for the Switch 2, but consumers don't seem to care at all.
Nope.
But again, that's also Nintendo. They could literally make a gigantic brick that sits beneath your TV, and it's still going to sell insanely well.
Yep.
Well, unless it's the Wii U.
Yeah.
The Wii U just never found its footing.
No, it was a terrible name.
It was a terrible name.
If they would have called it anything other than the Wii U, I think it would have done far better.
I agree.
As somebody who worked at GameStop at the time, yes. Because almost everybody thought it was a tablet for the Wii.
Yeah.
And and that's why I'm very glad that like every time they bring this up now, they're like, stop calling it the Switch 2. Like it's not going to be the Switch 2 because they've learned that mistake already.
What would be a good name?
No,
for
I think
it?
the Switch 2 would be the perfect name. Everybody would buy it.
I'm actually with you on that.
Nintendo's never done a direct successor console name, have they? They've never done like
Super
a 2
Nintendo.
or 3 or something. Super Nintendo, sure, but they've never done just Nintendo 2,
Right.
GameCube 2.
This would be the time.
Because it actually rolls off the tongue better. Like a Nintendo 2 sounds dumb. Super Nintendo was clearly a better name. Wii 2, just no. Like, that stuff isn't going to... GameCube 2, no, Switch 2 sounds great. And they should just go with it.
Yeah, and I know us gamers want Super Switch, of course. That would be fun. But I feel like the Switch 2 is the easiest way to tell everybody that, hey, this is a Switch, but more.
So what happens when you want to like release 1-2 Switch on the Switch 2?
You don't. And also, you just could. What do you mean? You just call it 1-2 Switch 2?
Yeah.
1-2
Switch 2.
It's really started to like put a lot of ideas in my head because I'm curious to see what's going to happen. Are they going to stick with like the same formatted cartridges? It's interesting because I don't think they've ever had the same other than
like
going
cartridge
from
or disc.
Yeah, like going from the Wii to the Wii U, it was even a different style of disc.
Yeah, and they even had their own specialized Blu-ray where it had the rounded edges.
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't just stick with cartridges for a handheld system. Like I don't know if there were technical issues with the discs on like the PSP, for instance. I never played a PSP, but it seemed like that was not the best idea for a system that's going to be moved around and jostled around and stuff to have a spinning disc.
Right.
No, I know that, but I'm just curious to see like are they going to redesign it? Or are they going to stick with a similar?
Will it be backwards compatible? Even is another good question.
Was going to be my question. Like, if you want to make consumers happy, make the same size cartridge so that you can also play your Switch games on there.
Or you just have a slot for original Switch cartridges.
Right, you could do it like the 3DS or something.
They're small
you
enough.
Can stick the older games in the bottom.
Or the original DS, where you could also play Game Boy Advance games and Game Boy games on it.
Yep.
Right.
Would you imagine they'd put all those slots on it?
Just
all of the Nintendo portable, Yeah,
they're like, it's completely backwards compatible across all
That would be
Nintendo
amazing.
generations.
That would be
The
amazing.
Nintendo slot.
Dude, that could
Call
be a
it
thing,
Nintendo
man.
slot.
Nintendo slot.
It's just a giant slot. No matter how you stick it in, it just works perfectly.
Oh, that would be
Yeah,
impressive.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Zach, what do you want to talk about, man?
Well, I mean, I guess I feel like the big story left is the Xbox chat.
Yeah, I was surprised it got this far before somebody brought it up.
I get it is inevitable.
Yeah,
but yeah, Xbox put out a I would describe baffling 22-minute Xbox podcast business update.
Yeah,
where they finally went on record about a bunch of stuff. Before we get into what is your top level thoughts about the podcast, Scott?
The first thing that I noticed about this, I mean, I watched it on YouTube. I didn't actually watch it in podcast form, but Phil Spencer does not look happy. He looks borderline annoyed that he has to do this presentation. He did not seem excited. It seemed very like a business meeting, not a, press conference, which I know it wasn't a press conference, but he seemed not into it. He seemed very not happy with what he had to say, and I think you have reasons as to why you may think that, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, the very first thing I noticed, if you're talking very top level, is what the hell was Tina Amini, former editor-in-chief of IGN, works for Xbox now? That's kind of a weird look, man.
Oh, having somebody... I didn't realize who it was. I was listening to it in the background.
That's just something as somebody who follows the industry, I'm like, I know people always think that critics and stuff are bought off, but that was the first time I could remember where I looked at that. I was like, that's not a good look.
I didn't even think about that.
That's yeah. But that was my favorite. But also, yeah, you're right. I think Phil Spencer, I don't know. My very surface level thought is they spent 22 minutes saying nothing.
Yeah, I was expecting like to be blown away with some news, and it seemed like a 22-minute conversation that could have been told in 3 minutes.
or a quick paragraph on a blog post.
Right.
What
This
about
could
you,
have been a
CB?
memo.
What were your top level thoughts on this thing?
I think Phil got shut down over something, and that's why he's mad. Like, I know everybody was like, "Oh my god, all the Xbox games are going to other platforms," and Phil Spencer has been adamant. You know what? If we're available on more platforms, awesome.
Right.
Whereas this feels like very much like, I know you want this, Phil, but no. Like, we spent a lot of money, rein it in.
That doesn't make any sense, though, because this would make them more money.
Yes and no.
I think it makes you more short-term money, but I think it costs you long-term money.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Like, I know he's very big on, like, the fact that he wants Game Pass on, like, all platforms, which ideally would make them a lot of money. But then when it comes to those, like, day one releases, like, instead of somebody else buying them to be on those, they're like, oh, well, we can just buy the Game Pass stuff and get them free as well. In my world, if you have Game Pass on Xbox, you get those day one releases first and everything. If you want those game releases and everything, they're like, Indiana Jones. If you have an Xbox and you have Game Pass, it's free on Game Pass on Xbox. But if you want Indiana Jones on PlayStation, you got to buy it outright.
Well, they said that that's not happening. They said that Starfield
I was using that as an example.
Okay.
Well, okay. We'll get back to that. Brandon, did you watch this thing?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
I have nothing to contribute.
You're here for other reasons. Understandable. No, but to what you were saying, Scott, where they said not Starfield or Indiana Jones multi-platform, that's not what they said. They said it's not one of the 4 games.
That's true.
And in a game industry biz, or The Verge, they did an interview somewhere else. I forget which outlet it is right now. I apologize. But he used the phrase, bringing Starfield to PS5, that's not the plan today.
That's not the plan today.
Yes. So Phil Spencer out here talking out of both sides of his mouth. This whole thing made me feel like I've always liked Phil Spencer, but I'm like, I don't know. I should probably just never going to trust this guy again. He
wasn't giving me warm and fuzzies at all.
Not today. No, that's true. But he normally does give me the warm and fuzzies. But everything felt so carefully worded.
It felt scripted. I felt like he was reading off a cue card.
It was definitely scripted. They rehearsed the hell out of this thing.
Yeah.
That's why they had their own employee hosting it rather than an actual journalist.
Right.
You know, because they didn't want to have to answer actual questions. But yeah, they did say Starfield and Indiana Jones are not part of the first 4 games. They wouldn't announce the 4 games because they want to let the teams announce it themselves, which I think is fair.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we can pretty much assume at this point in time one of them is Sea of Thieves.
Well, that just makes sense. To the same reason, and I think Phil Spencer said this somewhere else. Like Helldivers 2 on Xbox would make sense to me as well, right? Because the live service type of games, you want as many people playing them as possible because you want to keep the servers active and you want to keep engagement high, and you just need as many players as possible to support those kind of games.
Yes. I mean, Hi-Fi Rush was the other obvious one to me, especially with all the stuff that not just PlayStation but Switch as well.
Right.
Well, I mean, it makes sense for Xbox players, I guess, to get their. We brought it up before that, like some of these Game Pass exclusive games are still being bought just outright,
even on Xbox.
Yes.
Right.
So like it gets its run on Xbox for a while and then transferred over. So it's like, okay, now we can make money off this, but through the people that haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it could potentially, if it's cross-platform, bring people back into the game as well.
And while that is true in the optics world, does it not make them look a little weak?
To share?
Yet to, like, if you're trying to win a marketplace and you're saying that because it presents the idea that our exclusives aren't doing well enough on our console, therefore they must come over to PlayStation as well.
yes.
If
and
they had
no.
more exclusives, like that's the thing. Is like there's not that many.
Right.
Well, every Xbox doesn't really release their sales numbers for the actual
True.
systems. So I
Yes.
love the fact that they're like, oh well, PlayStation's outselling the Xbox, and I'm like, how do you know? They don't really release their sales numbers.
Well, because you can follow what CEOs say, right? Like when they're like, there are 77 next gen hardware or new gen pieces of hardware on the platform, and Sony's like, yeah, we've sold 50 something million. Then you can use easy subtraction and be like, oh, so they sold about 25 million Xbox Series consoles.
Theoretically, but the more interesting take that I took out of all of this was the 34 million Game Pass subscribers. Because some quick back of the envelope calculation, that's $577 million a month.
Well, that's for Game Pass Ultimate, right? Or is Game Pass Core, is that only $10 a month, or am I mistaken?
I can't remember the structures.
I can't even remember, but
Okay.
Majority of the, like even at like, let's say,
We can easily say that it's at least 350 million, right? Like that at bare minimum.
Majority of the people I know have Game Pass Ultimate.
See, but the majority, I mean, I know you guys, but anecdotally, most people I know just have the regular Game Pass on Xbox.
So, but it's,
I'm just saying, like,
it's got to be north of 400 million a month.
Okay, we can even use that as an estimate. Sure, 400 million.
That's a lot. Like, that's a lot money.
Yeah, but I also don't know how much they're spending to get the games on Game Pass.
That's true.
I think the FTC thing, it was what, $5 million a month just to have GTA on there or something like that we learned. And that's a 10-year-old game. Obviously that's one of the biggest games in the world, but
again, like that's a significant chunk of money.
no doubt, of course. That's why they want this everywhere. That's why they want this on your TV.
Yeah. So I'm actually like highly impressed by that number, because that's impressive. So
yeah. But again, like Zach said, we don't know what it costs to get those games on there.
Right. We're also not including how much it costs to make these exclusives that have been in development forever.
Plus
how
the
much
cost of Activision Blizzard. What was it?
Right.
65 billion? You know
So
what I mean?
something like that. Yeah. 68 point something.
But again, for what the largest company in the world right now,
yeah,
it's a drop in the bucket for them.
No, I understand, but you still it's going to take several years to get that money back.
Right.
Yeah.
In the Xbox division.
It's going to take a few years to get it back, but at the same time, it's not like they're exactly like hurting for money.
I understand. Yeah.
So how do you guys think this came about? Because here's my tinfoil hat theory. Okay, if I may. I think because Microsoft CEO has very publicly and constantly said how he hates the idea of video game exclusives and how he thinks it's costing Microsoft money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's been on record for that. So I think he sees that the ABK deal is sealed up. He's trying to make some money off of it as quick as possible. He says, we're putting our games everywhere. I don't care what it takes. And then I think an Xbox executive, maybe Phil Spencer, maybe Matt Booty, leaks this information to the known sources to demonstrate how riled up people would be at the idea of losing their exclusives. Because you buy into a console with the expectation of exclusives. Right. So I think an Xbox executive would know that, and I think a Microsoft executive would not. So my tinfoil hat is that they were being told from on high that these games are going everywhere. An Xbox executive leaks it on purpose, knowing that they already had a business update planned, which they claimed in the podcast. And then they to ensure that you could see the hellfire spreading everywhere, and how catastrophic it would be to their business to do it right now. And then you can't save these 4 games that were already probably in the works, but you can maybe delay Starfield going over there until you can try to demonstrate the power.
I mean, maybe that's why Phil was mad, is the fact that it could have been traced back to him. And he's the one who had to go play damage control.
I think Phil is. I get the impression, and this is of course just conjecture, my opinion. I get the feeling that Phil did not want this to happen at all, because they are right on the cusp of it all coming together. right? With Activision under their belt, all of their properties being able to maybe go to Game Pass or make new exclusives or what have you. You've got all those extra teams now. You finally got it to where you finally have exclusives people want to play. And now is the time that you're being told your games have to go everywhere else. I would be infuriated if I was a guy searing the Xbox ship for the past almost decade. When I'm right at the finish line, someone else telling me like, no, actually, you got to get off the racetrack. I would not.
Especially after they already had to make the concession of Call of Duty still not being exclusive.
Right. Exactly.
There's a game right there that they're going to be making up a ton of money off that sale, off that purchase. Release a Call of Duty game. Congrats. $.
Keep the machine going.
Yeah. There's some other information that was talked about as well. There, like Zach said, only 4 multi-plat games planned. They were older than 1 year. Game Pass Day 1 still continues, but he also mentioned new hardware coming in holiday 2024, and in his words, the biggest jump to next gen. Which, I mean, everybody says that.
Oh yeah, I've heard that about every console ever made.
Yeah,
but that's the thing is every time they release a new iteration, they're like, it's the biggest jump. Yeah, because there hasn't been one yet.
I don't feel like those were ever right, though. I feel like the bigger jumps were from the earlier consoles.
Right, go from a Super Nintendo to a PS1. That's a bigger jump.
Right.
Well, yeah, because every time we have one of these new jumps, it's just like, oh, look, ray tracing. Cool.
And it's also funny to hear because like most games still release on PS4 or Xbox One.
Yeah.
It's like we're not even taking advantage of this generation. Why do I care about the next one?
That's a really good point. And plus, like, look at the games that are selling super well that don't have fantastic graphics. I mean,
right?
Dave the Diver was a massive hit this year.
Pal World.
Helldivers 2
Yeah.
is like they overloaded the servers this weekend. They had to cap how many concurrent players they could have because they like opened it up and said you didn't have to have PlayStation Plus membership to play that game this weekend. And, apparently that game actually supposed to look pretty good, but it's not like a $60, $70 game.
No, dude, that game does crack me up, by the way, because everything I've seen, it looks just like Helldivers 1, but the camera is different.
Yeah.
And it's funny that that's all it took.
Right. They also said he talked about backwards compatibility and was adamant about respecting that. And he promised 10 plus releases in 2024 and then a showcase coming in June, which they do every summer. So,
hey, you know what? Shout out. Xbox has been more dedicated to backwards compatibility than any other company. Like unquestionably, they have the shortest history, I guess, to keep track of. But nonetheless, they're the only ones who seem to truly care about making sure that all of your purchases work forever.
But you know what's really funny is I was one of the ones beating down the wall saying I wanted this, and I never play any backwards compatible games anymore. Like,
I probably use my Xbox Series for old games way more than current games. Yeah. Okay. So that's just one example, of course.
I just remember how stoked I was that original Xbox games were going to be playable on the One. And I played Crimson Skies for about 45 minutes. And I played the Max Payne games solely on your recommendation, and so we could talk about it. And I think that's it.
I mean, that's not a bad way to use it, though.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
I do think it's a good Game Pass strategy to take your exclusives a year later and put them elsewhere for $70 and say, hey, so you could have been playing it here, including your subscription all this time. But I do think you need a stable of some exclusives like Halo or Gears in order to entice people to your console at all.
I agree.
So.
And we haven't heard about Gears in a while.
No.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And Halo is Halo at this point. Season 2.
Have they ever fumbled an IP harder?
I like that campaign, though. It was so good.
No, I did too. Absolutely. But then all the promised continuance of the story never happened.
Yep.
Yeah. It says Infinite right in the name.
Yeah. What are you going to call the next one?
Halo, we messed up.
Halo Anti-Infinite.
Halo, sorry for the last
Ouroboros.
one. Ouroboros, there you go.
Oh, what you did there. All right, well, I'm going to mention this last story really quickly just because I want to hear what Zach thinks about this. Because this was news to me, but it sounds like with the next Tomb Raider trilogy, it could be going back to Lara's original look Crystal Dynamics launched a new website for the franchise on Wednesday, and it shows a new, quote, unified design of Lara. If you guys remember, she made an appearance in the last Call of Duty with a similar throwback. The assumption here is that she's going to be having this look going forward with the series. Zach, I'm curious, because we haven't seen, the shorts and the blue shirt and everything like that since the original trilogy, right?
Yeah, we haven't seen dual pistols even since 2008.
Right. So assuming this is true, we don't know. This is just kind of conjecture at this point. Is this something you want, or would you have preferred the series to go in the direction that it was going?
This is another confusing instance of does nobody remember what people say? Crystal Dynamics has been saying they're unifying Lara and Tomb Raider since Shadow of the Tomb Raider came out.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew this was coming. The look is cool. I mean, it basically just looks like Tomb Raider 1 era Lara, but with the necklace of the new one.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just funny. It's like we unified it by putting a necklace on her.
Yeah.
Which I think is funny. I assume she'll have a bow, and then whatever the new game is, there's a bow and dual pistols, and then hey, there you go, unified. I mean, the biggest difference I think between new Lara and old Lara is her quippiness. In the new one, she is more of an aggressive. I mean, she was always aggressive, but she doesn't make quite the same level of sarcastic jokes.
Mm-hmm.
She's much more serious. Whereas the other ones, it's like someone tries to hire her for a treasure job, and she just goes, "Oh, you've been misinformed. I only play for sport." She's just always she's a little sassy.
Yeah,
more ice pick.
Yes, I think you'll get more of the ice pick energy going forward, which is good, I think.
All right, cool. That's all that really had to be said about that. Let's go ahead and move on very quickly before we get to the new games that we've been playing. I want to remind everybody about Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/thegocast. Certain tiers have bonus episodes, and we really love doing those. CB, what can everybody check out right now, and what's on the horizon?
Well, Scott and Zack's Desert Island games with special guest Paul Hine.
And Paul actually reached out to me and asked me if you and Alyssa wanted to do one as well.
Oh, dude, I'm down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll have to put a list together.
Comment on my show. I see how it is.
That's how it goes, man. Also, meet the patrons, Paul Hine and Tim Paulin. There's going to be a new Piece of Mind episode coming soon, as well as a possibility of a Break the Seal, The Lone Ranger, or Sands of Time. So
Sands of Time would be easy. You got that one memorized. I'm just saying.
You've played it like a billion times.
Correct.
And then Scott's online Borderlands crew as they meet the patrons.
Yes, we were supposed to record that this weekend, but things didn't happen. So by the end of the month, I hope to sit down with those three jokers and talk to you guys about games as well. Thank you so much, CB. Let's go ahead now and jump into the new games that we've been playing. Zach, can you tell us what is coming out on the horizon this coming week?
Sure. First thing, you got a puzzle game with an environmental message, Flooded, coming to PS4 and Xbox One February 23rd. Then we have Shiren the Wanderer, The Mystery Dungeon of Serpent Coil Island, which is a throwback-looking game I had to just put on here due to its name alone. Coming out on Switch February 27th. Dice Folk, which has dice in the title, therefore I thought of Scott, coming to PC February 27th.
I like dice.
Yeah, you do. You love throwing dice. She says it's your favorite part of D&D. I pay attention to you. I listen.
It's you.
I don't care. Pekka Minosa, A Deadly Hand, a noir adventure, is coming to PS4, Xbox One, Switch, February 28th. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons remake, a project I had already forgotten about. Coming to PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC, February 28th. Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster, coming to all consoles and PC, February 28th. Pop Slinger is a beat-em-up game, coming to PS5, PS4, Xbox Series consoles, and Xbox One, February 29th. Tamarack Trail is a deck-building game, coming to all consoles and PC, February 29th. And then, of course, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, coming to February 29th. To, I assume, consume all of our lives.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure me.
I mean, it's going to be a busy month going into March. Got Skull and Bones, Rebirth.
Hell.
Oh, dude, I plan on playing Skull and Bones. I just haven't sat down to. But I mean, come on, I got to release my inner Kyle with Star Wars Dark Forces.
Oh, your little Kyle Katarn action?
Oh,
see those Death Star plans?
Many Bothans will die.
One would hope. Well, I assume FF7 Rebirth is the easy choice. So you said CB, your runner-up would be Star Wars Dark Forces?
I honestly, I might play Dark Forces first because I know I can beat it.
Well, sure. What about you, Scott?
Actually, I am interested to go back to play Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons again. Even though I don't think that game needs a remake, but it's been long enough, and I'll review it. Someone throws a code at me, but I probably wouldn't go out and buy it, but unless it's amazing. But it's Dark Forces I want to play because I've never played it, but that's not going to be a one I have to play right now. I'll wait for a sale.
Right, you've already waited decades.
Yeah.
What about you, Brandon? Is there a runner-up game on this list that you're interested in?
Nope. No, it's all FF7 Rebirth. That's the only thing that's on my radar for the foreseeable future. I may or may not have taken a couple days off of work for that one. Well, it comes out on a Thursday. I'm not going to be able to focus.
Right,
Yeah,
you're
no.
going to be worthless at work.
Exactly. So I decided to save them from that by just not being there.
I am already anticipating having a cold the Monday after that game comes out. But I think for me, my runner-up would also be Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so annoyingly in sync. Look at us. No, Kyle Katarn's just cool as hell. His boomer shooter action out there. But speaking of man, what remasters and remakes, huh? That's all it's come to. Scott, you've been playing Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Switch. This is a remake of a Game Boy Advance game that I remember quite enjoying when I was young. But does it hold it up today?
Well, it's hard to answer if it holds up because I never played the original. I wanted to play the original so badly when I was a kid, and it dodged me for some reason, and that's kind of why I was so amped to play this one. You said you did play it? You liked it a lot?
Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was younger, yeah.
So the first thing I want to warn people is that, it's a Mario game, but it's not a Mario game.
It's a puzzle game.
It's a puzzle game. The platforming is not as precise as the Mario games that you're familiar with, Wii U or Odyssey and all that kind of stuff. The platforming is actually a little, I'm not gonna say janky. It's just not as floaty as you expected Mario to be. But that's not what the game is. It's not about platforming.
Right.
It's about solving puzzles, and you're chasing Donkey Kong because he stole all these little mini Mario figures from the toy store.
Yeah, I remember that.
And each level opens up with Donkey Kong peeking his head through this locked door, which is the end goal that you have to get to, and he drops one of the mini Mario figures, and you have to get there. So there are these, they start out super simple, and they get progressively harder as these kinds of games do. I was really worried when I started this, man, because it was so easy, like stupid easy. In the first world, like no challenge whatsoever. I actually completed half the game in one sitting. And when I say half the game, the original game had 6 worlds. They have included 2 extra worlds in this release, so there's now 8 worlds. The game boasts 120 levels, which is a little misleading because each world has 6 levels in it, and each level is split up into 2 halves. So they're counting those. They're counting those as a level, and then, I don't know if you remember from the original game, but when you pass a certain number of levels, one of the other, like this 1-up mushroom level pops up, which is this quick little 30-second level to chase a flying key and then bring it back to the thing. That counts as a level.
So
and
they're goosing their numbers.
A little bit. And then once you beat each of the 6 levels in a world, then it opens up this cute, I'm not going to say mini game, but it's another puzzle game where you have the little mini Marios following behind you, and you have to lead them through the level.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah,
which it's also a chore to not only get them through the level, but also not to lose any of them and get them back to the chest so that you get a perfect score. Because this game does the 3-star method thing. And then another level, which isn't even a level; it's just a boss fight against Donkey Kong. Where there's different interesting ways to take him out, like throwing barrels at him and whatnot. So again,
I'm not making a quality judgment. I genuinely don't know. Are they charging $60 for this?
No, this is a $50 title.
Okay.
So, I looked up the how long to beat before I started just because I was curious, and it said 5 hours, and that's with the 2 extra bonus worlds. So, it's getting more difficult, but it's getting difficult in a way where the I don't know how to explain this. There's like a color system in this. There's blue, red, and yellow switches that turn on platforms and turn off other ones. And I can't wrap my head around, when you turn a blue one on, or you hit a blue switch and it turns the blue ones on, that's great, but I don't know which ones it means it turns off, and I can't get that right in my brain. CB knows I can't do binary stuff very well, and you throw in a third one in there, it just makes it even worse for me. So, but the level structures are done in such a way that you almost don't need that. You just kind of follow the path. They do the Mario thing where they kind of teach you what they want you to do as you go, and it's really cleverly designed. I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought I would. It's cute, it's fun, but if the second half is short as this one and not as challenging, it's gonna be kind of a miss for me. It's not a traditional Mario game. I was expecting, I don't know, a little bit more whimsy, but again, I got the second half of the game to play. So
yeah, I don't really remember its difficulty, so I don't have any information for you. I don't feel like it ever got, I beat it when I was a kid, so I can't imagine it got too tough.
But I'm also the kind of guy that's got to get 3 stars on every level, which hasn't been a challenge. I think one time I had to redo a level, and it was like a boss battle because I got hit by a barrel or something. So, I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I'm gonna plow through it. I just haven't decided if I'm going to be fastidious about getting all the perfect stars in there. So, that is Mario versus Donkey Kong. I expected to like it more, honestly. Yeah. It's cute, it's fun, but I don't know. I was expecting to be more blown away, and I think it's just a product of its time. It looks pretty, it looks nice, it's got the more modern graphics, but not nearly as fun as I was expecting. But you, Zach, you have been playing the remasters of Tomb Raider 1 through 3. Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remastered on PS5. I know you have been stoked about this. Alyssa has been stoked about jumping back into these games. You grew up with these games. I've never played them. So how are they control-wise? Because I know they are massively different from the original PlayStation controls.
Well, for one thing, I'm playing it on PS4, actually.
Because, my bad.
Because the PS5 version only has 1 Platinum trophy for all 3 games combined, whereas the PS4 version has a Platinum trophy for each game.
Oh.
I don't know what that's about. Sony, sort it out. I know it's your fault, because otherwise they would have done it. But it was... these obviously does not make a difference,
Yeah.
Remastered PS1 games. If you're asking about the controls specifically, I tried playing with the modern controls for about half a minute, and no thank you. No.
Really?
But this is probably because I grew up playing the old controls.
Yeah.
I have muscle memory into...
Yeah.
Yeah, like you press triangle to whip out your pistols, and then you hold down X to shoot. Whereas the modern controls, are more up to date, where you hold down the left trigger to aim your gun.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't. It just doesn't work for me with Tomb Raider.
Okay.
And you want to run around by big chunks of space at a time, jump forward by a square or two.
One grid at a time. You got it. Absolutely. That's how it. One grid square at a time. That's how I roll. But if you haven't played them before, the modern controls are probably going to be the way to go, because the jump button is on X or A on Xbox, where every other video game has a jump button. And the shooting controls are a little bit better. And of course, most importantly, you don't have to turn her before you start walking.
Right.
You can just press the direction you want to go in, and she will run that way. But
so did you have to select default original controls, or did you actually map everything the way that was comfortable for you?
Well, yeah. So very nicely in these settings, it just has tank controls or modern controls, and it actually defaults to tank controls, which I thought was interesting. But it does have the modern ones, and the modern control it auto grabs ledges for you, which I'm sure will be nice for people, because Tomb Raider and is the only game I can think of where after you jump you have to hold down a different button to grab the ledge.
Yeah,
so that's a little tricky. But as for the game itself, I mean, what's nice about these is that it is mostly the same exact games, just prettier.
Okay.
Right. So it's beautiful. I mean, these old games are absolute classics. They're very puzzle focused. They're not nice. They're not afraid to kill you without a moment's notice. So you can save anywhere, and be sure to save often would be my recommendation. because you could just fall down a hole and then 2 seconds later you're gonna get crushed to death by spikes because you didn't know that after you fell down the hole you had to start running right away. It's very 2D Prince of Persia in that way.
I'm good. I'm all practiced up for that, man. Because Baldur's Gate 3, I save all
constantly.
The time.
Good. That's a good strategy to have.
Yeah.
But the graphical improvements are very nice. The Tomb Raider Lara model looks a lot like she did in the Legend Anniversary and Underworld era.
Oh, okay.
If that means anything to anybody. But the games are as they were. There are some nice adjustments, like when you have to pick up a key or use a lock or an action. There'll be a little exclamation point over it so that way you actually notice it, because in the old games it could blend into the environment sometimes. And most nice is that when you can press it from a distance away and she'll actually walk over and do it. Whereas if you play the original game, you have to be lined up perfectly or else she wouldn't do anything.
Right.
And that was very frustrating, even for somebody who played him to death. But the new graphics are great, and there are mouth flaps during cutscenes now. But the best part about the remaster is that if you just press the start button, the graphics change.
Oh, you get to go that flip back and forth thing?
Yeah, with no hesitation between the PS1 and the modern graphics. I'm pressing the button, constantly. Every room I walk into, I'm like, what did it look like? What? But overall,
every remaster should do that.
I think every remaster should. I don't expect it for every remake. I don't expect Resident Evil 4 to be flopping back and forth between the GameCube and the new one.
Mm-hmm.
But every remaster, I think, should have a button for that.
I agree.
But the games are great. I think if you like Tomb Raider, the original, this is a no-brainer. Pick up. And it's funny. It is funny watching the modern graphics over the grid structure because everything's still heavily angular like on PS1, but it looks really pretty.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you a question, Zach, because as a person that hasn't played these before, are they updated enough that I would be able to enjoy them without feeling like I'm playing a PlayStation 1 game? You know what I mean? Like, is it a good place to go, or do you recommend just playing it originally?
No, I mean you're not going to get tricked into thinking this is anything but a PS1 game.
Okay.
Even though it looks like a 360 era game or what have you, but just based on the way the levels are built out on those harsh grids and the way lining up jumps and stuff works, because you need like enough space to make a sprint jump. Basically, like the way it is structured, no, you're never going to feel like this is anything but a PS1 game.
Okay.
It'll just happen to look nicer than one.
Mm-hmm.
But those graphics do go a long way. Like if like you're in the middle of a cave, so it should be pitch dark, right? In real life, but you can perfectly see fine. But in the remastered graphics, it'll have like a little crack in the ceiling that lets sunlight through, so it kind of explains why it's lit up. Which I know is a very tiny detail, but it is really nice. And these games are just they're brain teasers. They really very puzzle focused, and it was nice to solve puzzles in a game where the character isn't telling you how to do it.
Yeah.
Or there's no yellow paint on where to climb or anything. It's just you're left to your own devices to figure things out, and that's really, really nice. Because we're definitely
back to that,
or at least have the option for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing that really stands out to me about the original Tomb Raider. It was the only one I ever played, and I never got extremely far in it because those puzzles were hard. That always stood out in my mind. I remember having a very hard time trying to solve those puzzles. I mean, I don't remember how old I was when that came out, but some time ago. Yeah, they don't mess around.
Yeah, they're definitely tricky, even for the adult mind. Even though I remember most of the solutions, I'm still like, wow, they're asking a lot of you just to get this boat out of this garage.
And then you go, I figured this out when I was a kid.
Right? Yes, exactly. I'm like, it's just
before
a different
YouTube videos existed.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. A different era. They were probably trying to sell strategy guides. That's probably why they did it. Different era of game design.
Yeah, that's true.
For
sure. But I think it's great, and this Lara is just wonderful. Seeing.
You said mouth flaps. Does that mean like in the original there was no mouth movement at all? She just talked and moved her head around.
Mouth open, didn't move.
The mouth was not open. It was just her big old lips on the PS1 character model. They all, because games couldn't do that back then. Like look at those FF7 graphics. They just have giant squares for knuckles. It's just how things were back then. So yeah, it was really funny flipping through the old graphics and the new and seeing the old one, which just kind of looks like a marionette on a string or something.
Mm-hmm.
But here in the new one, she actually has facial expressions in the new graphics, and yeah, man. I mean, it's wonderful. If you're a Tomb Raider fan, like it's almost a heartwarming little nostalgia trip. I will say though,
but I would struggle with it. Probably.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for new people. If you're really invested in, like, say the new Tomb Raider games got you into the franchise, I think this is the best way for you to go back if you did want to check them out.
Mm-hmm.
I just think you just have to know what you're getting into. You just have to go in there with a mentality of like, yes, it says remastered, but this is still Tomb Raider.
Gotcha.
It's not. They didn't really do any quality of life for remake features, which to me I think is the ideal way to do it.
Okay.
I want, especially I want this era of game, and I want to know what it felt like. If you want to do a full remake, I understand having the new improvements and stuff. But if you're just giving me a remastered, pretty up version of a game, give it to me. Give it to me dirty, baby. Give it to me how it was.
That you'd like Final Fantasy Renaissance.
Just that's what I'm talking about. Final Fantasy Renaissance. Give it to me dirty.
Mm-hmm. All the challenge.
But,
that's going to be on the box whenever he gets.
Give it to me dirty.
Oh man,
hell yeah!
I'll quote you on the
Zack
website. Testimonials.
I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more. Obviously, it's very busy right now, so I doubt I'm going to squeeze in a lot more Tomb Raider Remastered time right now.
Mm-hmm.
But with having those expansion packs for the first time, they were only PC exclusive originally. I'm pretty stoked, man. There's a lot of Tomb Raider goodness. But yeah, if you have even a passing interest in these old games, I think Aspyr did a wonderful job. It has crashed on me twice. I don't know what that's about. It seemed a little. I figured a PS4 or PS5 could handle a PS1 game, but I guess not all the time.
No, it's confused by it. It's like,
yeah,
what is this? I thought we weren't doing backwards compatible.
What is this old nonsense? Where are the shadows? Yeah, it's but I mean, I think these games are a delight.
That's awesome.
But you got to have those tank controls on, though. That's the right way to play it. Okay.
And I'll let you know. Whenever I get to it. It's on my list, but there is so much to play right now. I mean, just the games that Baldur's Gate alone. Between Baldur's Gate and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I don't know when I'm going to have time for anything outside of work. Like it's just nuts. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy month, and then hopefully it quiets down because there's not a ton I feel like coming out.
Yeah, I think the only game I'm interested in March is Alone in the Dark.
I forgot about that. Totally forgot about that.
Do you know what the best part about Alone in the Dark is? 6 to 10 hours.
There you go. Yeah, do it.
Shout out to a studio doing it right.
Not enough.
Yeah,
not enough for me.
No, well, you have two different characters, okay, Brandon. So I guess you get 12 to 20 if you play your cards right.
Yeah, there you go. Maximize everything.
All right, real quick, want to remind everybody about our website, thegamingoutsider.com. If you'd like to check out reviews and all of the episodes that we've ever recorded, you can find them there at thegamingoutsider.com. We would appreciate it. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into our From the Outside In topic. Brandon Smith is our special guest this week, and quite honestly, the inspiration for this week's From the Outside In topic. He's obviously a lover of JRPGs, so we decided to talk about the genre as a whole. I don't think we've ever done this before. We did a Final Fantasy episode once, where we talked about specific games in that series, but we never talked generally about Japanese role-playing games. So let's start with why we love Japanese role-playing games to begin with. I'd like to assume we all know what JRPG means, but just in case some of our listeners aren't familiar, let's define what that term means. What makes a JRPG a JRPG? Brandon, I'm going to start with you since you're the expert.
Oh boy, this is a big one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess so. Let's start, I suppose, with the literal definition of JRPG. So it stands for Japanese role-playing game. So RPG, of course, is role-playing game. The term role-playing game, I feel like over the years as I've played more and more RPGs and more just other types of games from other genres, I feel like the term role-playing game is too generic. In the literal sense, because any game that you play, you're playing a character. You're taking on a role of this character. So that title really doesn't tell you much of anything about what the genre means. But if you ask someone who plays a lot of RPGs, what is an RPG? I think most people would agree that At least in the traditional sense, when you think of RPG, you're thinking of a game where you're controlling typically a party of I should say a group of characters would be a party. You typically are controlling or commanding more than one character. Some staples of the genre are that the structure of the game is typically broken up between some sort of like an overworld where you traverse the maps of the game. You get from place to place in some sort of map, and battles take place either in a different scene entirely. You go into a battle scene, or the game mode switches in some way from just traversal into combat. So there's different modes that you're kind of flipping back and forth between. And again, I'm thinking more in the traditional sense of older RPGs. That's where most of my experience with RPGs comes from. But RPGs have changed a lot over the years. Now you have action RPGs, things like take Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth, whatnot, for instance. They took the original Final Fantasy VII, which was very much a turn-based game, where you go from walking around on an overworld bird's eye view looking at your character's head into random battles that you don't know when they're going to happen. You just are walking along on the map, and all of a sudden you kind of get transitioned into an entirely different scene where you're looking at different versions of your character models, and you're fighting monsters in a turn by turn format where enemies take turns, then you take turns, and vice versa. The remake version of Final Fantasy VII is very much an action RPG where you don't have those hard cuts between traversal and battle. Your main character is walking around in this very detailed world where you see the enemies around you typically, and you can choose whether to walk up to them and engage them, or to completely avoid them if you want to. And those battles take place in that exact same world. Or that same scene, I suppose, instead of completely shifting into a different game mode.
Yeah. There's no transition.
Yeah. So you've kind of got different definitions of what an RPG can be. I guess somebody help me out. Am I missing anything? But that's kind of where I go. Is always the traditional.
I would add, and maybe you said this and I just missed it, but I would add that there's some kind of progression, character progression. In terms of, like, you usually start as a very, weak character, and you slowly get stronger and stronger by gaining experience.
Yeah.
And better weapons and gear, things like that.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because that is a very core component, I would say. The experience system, the idea of starting with a character at maybe level 1, or some games will start you on some low level like 5 or 7 or something like that. That represents how strong your character is, and they have different stats like their strength and agility and magic power and stuff like that increases as you play the game, and as you defeat enemies and obtain experience points, your characters level up, which you see that in other games as well. And sometimes they'll say those are RPG elements if they're in other games, but because they became popular and made famous by RPGs. But yeah, that's definitely a core component as well.
What do you
think? I think a key differentiator between, on the whole, in this, there are exceptions, of course, on either end, but between JRPGs and more Western RPGs is choice. Because JRPGs are usually, this is the character, this is their story, and you're following along with them. Whereas I feel like a lot of Western RPGs, even if they do give you a character to start with, but I feel they often let you create your own. But even if they do give you your own, it's all about kind of creating the story you want to see, making choices here or there. Like Baldur's Gate, where you can miss an entire party member. That is rarer in a JRPG, and that's why, for me personally, I prefer a JRPG over a WRPG. As I like following the story that they want to tell, not multiple variations of a story.
Yeah, JRPGs definitely are kind of synonymous with deep, really fleshed out, solid stories. Oftentimes involving cutscenes and things like that to tell major storyline beats, which a cutscene in a game, if you're not familiar with the genre, would essentially be like a cinematic sequence where you're essentially watching a little brief movie clip play out. Or in more modern games, it's not so much a pre-designed movie clip. It would be rendered at runtime as you're playing the game. But it's those are the sequences where the camera kind of gets taken away from you, and you're just watching something for a while where you can't control anything. That's how a lot of RPGs tell their story. And you mentioned the difference between JRPG, Japanese RPG, and Western RPG. And Baldur's Gate is a perfect example of that more Western RPG style, like you said, where you're designing your own character, you're kind of crafting your own experience based on the choices that you make. Even though there's a story that's involved in those games, you have a lot more freedom to kind of like experience that story as you want to, in sort of the sequence that you want to, and stuff like that. Skyrim is another great example, talking about popular RPG style games. That would be a Western RPG as well.
There's almost always got to be a character named Sid too.
In the Final Fantasy games, yes. If we're talking about Final Fantasy specifically.
I've come across Sids in other games too.
Oh, yeah. Could be nods.
I always love the JRPG trope of every town you go to has progressively better blacksmiths.
Right?
Yeah. What are the odds? I just happened to go to this town, and it's slightly better than the last one.
Yeah, but the only armor sold here is better than the armor of the last town. That's weird.
Yeah. There's a lot of tropes. There's a lot of tropes, just like in any RPG genre. We touched on earlier the whole idea of fighting God. That's very very common. Something like God tends to be kind of like the ultimate end goal boss of the game in a lot of Japanese RPGs.
Quest 1 in JRPG, go to the store to pick up bread.
Yeah.
Quest 66 in a JRPG, kill God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes Quest 1 is go fight a rabbit outside of town.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Or rats. I remember rats and slime.
Yeah, a lot of rats.
Yeah.
There is a lot of amnesia too, though, Sky, you're right.
Yeah, they tend to...
I feel like
I was going to say Japanese RPGs tend to follow that. I suppose it's considered part of the hero's journey, or the... what is the term for that? Is it hero's journey? Hero's story?
Yeah, I think so.
Where you start off as like a basic weakling little farm boy kind of thing, and your journey is to realize your destiny as the chosen one that will vanquish the darkness kind of thing. That's kind of like a very common structure for a lot of JRPGs specifically.
So I mean, clearly Brandon likes games in this genre, but what about the rest of you? Do you like games in this genre, and if so, why? What makes you love them so much? What drew you to the genre when you play them?
Oh man, I think I do love JRPGs, but I think I really like how they always start off so quaint, and then they do the slow build up, and it just feels you kind of get that you get wrapped up in the adventuring spirit that the characters get wrapped up into as well.
Yeah,
there is something about that slow build up that is exciting, and then. So when things start popping off, it feels, I guess, earned. Maybe is a word. It just feels right.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I never thought about that, but you're totally right. I think I've talked about this in the past, but like even with movies, my favorite parts of movies are when they're developing the characters and there's just regular stuff going on.
Yeah.
Before you hit that like rising action, you just got that, just everybody just being whatever. I enjoy that part of the game. Enjoy the rest of the movie. I enjoy the rest of the movie as well. But that's what you get in JRPGs as well, just like a slice of life until the stuff happens.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I love that stuff because you get to be with the characters in their more natural environment first before everything goes to hell, and I think I really like that. That's probably why I often start more JRPGs than I finish too, because as you start to go on the venture, you kind of lose a little bit of that cozier atmosphere.
Right.
And also they're really long.
Yes.
Well, yeah, when we were kids, that was
well, it was easier to find the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
CB, what about you?
As far as for me, it's one of two things. Either when I was younger, yes, you got a lot of bang for your buck. Like you could sit there and be like, okay, I can play this game for a long, long time. I will say JRPGs are not my first choice. I'm a shmup and schmacross kind of guy through and through.
Yeah, you love getting in them schmangles.
Yep, I do. Shma everywhere. But I do kind of love the Baggins effect. Like
the Baggins effect.
You almost always have I'm going on an adventure.
Oh, okay.
Like that initially your character didn't want to go on, but you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to go on that. Or like Frodo, where it's like, oh, my family member did this before me, I have to do it also.
Gotcha.
So for me, it's like, I always kind of liked that, because again, you are immersing yourself so deep into this world. You're like, I'm literally going on an adventure.
Actually, Lord of the Rings, since you mentioned Baggins, as in Bilbo and Frodo from Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings is a perfect example of an RPG brought to life as movies, or I mean, obviously the books first, but they put together a party where they each have a different, specialty or job class of some sort. You've got a elf that's a ranger, you've got a dwarf that's like a warrior, berserker kind of thing with his axe. You've got all these different characters that serve these different roles, and you're traveling across this big world, and
to go fight God,
skills as you go to kind of fight God, to destroy the darkness. Yeah,
right. No, I mean, Brandon, that's a good point. That every JRPG just is typically a found family story as well, which is easy to get wrapped into.
Nice.
It is funny that I guess I hadn't thought about. Yeah, everyone in the Fellowship has their specialization, much like every member of Cloud's
except
party.
Aragorn. He's good at everything.
Well, of course, he's Cloud.
He's your jack of all trades.
Yep.
and the sexy one.
Not too hard on the eyes.
None of us are disagreeing. Nobody's saying.
Hey, Viggo Mortensen is a beautiful man.
When he's throwing those doors open, drenched from the rainfall. Oh, yeah, how you doing?
I want to go rewatch his movies.
So it's okay.
Brandon, what about you, man? Why do you love this genre so much?
That's a good question. So interestingly enough, for me, I got into RPGs a little bit later. Not late, not like adult years or anything, but I remember when Final Fantasy VII came out. This is going to be a shock to some people, I think, if you know that I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. That I did not get into RPGs at all, let alone Final Fantasy games, until after Final Fantasy VII came out. 7 was my first one. It was my first RPG, period. And I remember before I got into RPGs, before FF7, I knew other people that played them, and I had kind of seen them in passing here and there, at friends' houses and whatnot, and they never caught my interest. I thought there was something about, at least, the older RPGs at the time, that turn-based system of, you get into battle and you input commands for your characters, and then the enemies go and you just watch, especially some of the older, more rudimentary ones, there's not a lot of animation. You've got, the enemies just like flash, and then all of a sudden there's numbers popping up above your characters' heads, and then you swing your sword, and then across the screen the enemy somehow takes damage. I thought it was weird. I couldn't get into it. And it's funny to think about now, because now it's almost all I play is RPGs. And Final Fantasy VII just helped to kind of bridge that gap, because that was the flashy, sexy, 3D models and fully animated with cutscenes and all this kind of stuff version of that concept. And so it was an easier entry point, I think, for me at the time. Just like kind of how the new Final Fantasy VII, the new action-based stuff, is a better entry point for people now, for younger gamers and people that just never got into the old ones. But I fell in love with them after playing FF7. I immediately went back through, I wanted to learn what I'd missed in the series, since this was obviously the 7th one, at least, that had come out, and I immediately just went back and started playing through all of them, not necessarily in sequential order, but as much as I could at the time. Some of them came out later in the US as ports and stuff, but yeah, I just completely immersed myself in RPGs after that and never really looked back.
Nice.
Yeah, I do. If I may, part of the love is the turn-based combat. Because I find them more tense even than action games, because if you get in a bad spot, you really got to think several steps ahead about who's going to do what in your party in order to get yourself out of this jam. And that it's almost like chess in that way, and I find that very, very satisfying.
Yeah, actually, that is one of the things I think that that really solidified my love of the genre, where it was the exact thing that I was critiquing before getting into the games, was that style of turn-based combat. But once I learned it and kind of got the whole point of it, I really embraced it because, like you said, it gives you an opportunity to really strategize. And if you're the type of person who doesn't really like lots of things coming at them all at once, you get overwhelmed easily, or it just frustrates you. RPGs are a great answer to that, because you can really, in most games, depending on how it's structured, you can really take your time and plan out exactly what you want to do, and that feels like it's a certain level of control that not all games give you.
That's honestly one of the big draws for me to the genre from even at a younger age. Is even to this day, I don't have a whole lot of self-confidence in my ability to play action games. I always worry that even when I'm playing that Mario versus Donkey Kong game, I'm just like, okay, this game's really easy. It's gonna trip me up, and I'm gonna hit that wall. I'm just expecting that wall because I suck at games. You know what I mean? And as a kid, I had that same mentality. I loved games, but I just could never. I didn't have the dexterity because I was a child. You know what I mean? It took me a long time to really get that dexterity. And then JRPGs come along, and I realized it doesn't require dexterity. It requires me to use my brain. I was a smarter kid. You know what I mean? I was a grade A student, and I was pretty intelligent. And where I could actually sit and play a game where I use my brain to complete it instead of the dexterity of my thumbs was such a huge thing for me. That was just a massive reason why I wanted to play it, because it felt so satisfying to feel like I was taking down this boss without just doing something crazy with my hands. The other thing I had on my list, you already mentioned the hero's journey. I think that was a big draw for me because we all played all kinds of video games. We played Contra, where you're like this big muscular dude running through the jungle, jumping over these massive gaps and taking down massive machines and aliens and all this kind of stuff. But I couldn't relate to those characters.
Same.
And JRPGs, usually you started out as a younger character, sometimes even a small boy. And I was a small boy when I was, playing JRPGs for the first time. So I could relate to that character. It was easier for me to have those wish fulfillments of going on a great hero's journey or adventure because I grew up with the character. I was the same age as the character when he started, and it was easier for me to think I could go and do something amazing with my life if I just stick to it. You know what I mean? That's why the genre number one stuck with me. This goes along with the hero's journey, but just the epic nature and scope of the storylines. I remember seeing the trailer for Final Fantasy VII when I was a kid, and the TV commercial. You know that scene at Mount Nibel when I can't spoil this game anymore. We've already talked about that. Where Sephiroth like rips Genova out of the reactor thing or whatever, and there's like this blank face with the hollow eyes and this cool looking character with these shoulder armor. It just blew my mind about what is going on. I have to know what's going on in this story, and I'd never seen anything like that. And it was that commercial grabbed me so much.
Absolutely.
And then I sat down and played the game, and sure, you have the opening train sequence or whatever, the reactor run, but then the game, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But when the game finally like kicks in and you have the logo come across the screen and that music kicks in, and you just feel like I'm about to do something awesome. I'm at the start. This is the very beginning of an epic adventure that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, and that music just sold it for me.
Yeah, and epic is absolutely the right word, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because I am kind of foolish to not mention story and music when talking about things that I love about the genre, because that's another thing that they're extremely good at and known for, is having these just amazing epic stories and having some of the best, orchestral music and sometimes now vocal music and stuff like that in the later ones. It's just the whole package of a great RPG is something that you can't get anywhere else. I know Zach's talked about in previous episodes the fact that the video game not genre, what's the word? Video games as an art form, as a medium, can do things that you can't get from movies, you can't get from, anything else, from television, from books. There's things that you can experience in video games that can only be done in that medium. And RPGs, I think, are one of the greatest examples of what you can do with storytelling in video games.
Yeah, dude, I'm sorry. I was just gonna a specific example that I always think of where really shows the strength of storytelling is in the FF7 original game in the Nibelheim flashback when Cloud and Sephiroth are attacked by some monsters on the road, and Cloud, who you've been playing as the whole game, gets one-shotted by this enemy. But then it lets you play as Sephiroth, who then one-shots that enemy.
Yeah.
And that's a way to let you know that Sephiroth is in a league you can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't translate as well in any other medium where you're not controlling that character and feeling exactly how strong they are in all these battles leading up to this point. Yeah, it's just a different level of being able to connect with that story.
Awesome. This is great conversation, but we got to get into our personal favorites. What are at the tops of your guys' lists, and maybe some hidden gems that we may not have heard? Because I know we're gonna all have the Final Fantasies and the Chrono Triggers, and there's gonna be some that I feel like are gonna be all of our lists. And obviously, I'm not saying don't mention them, but I really want to hear some that maybe some of us haven't heard of.
You want to start?
We're gonna start with CB.
Oh, we're gonna start with me. Ooh, as far as my personal favorites, Vagrant Story, Legend of Dragoon, obviously.
Of course, obviously.
Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy III.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
The real
3 or 6?
The real one. Okay.
The real 3.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, 5. Final Fantasy for me has always been there growing up. I really didn't start wandering off the path until post PS1 and trying some of the other ones. And we didn't get a PS2 till later in my house. So picking up a lot of the PS1 JRPGs, like Legend of Dragoon.
Of them.
So many.
Oh, dude, there's when we get to the ones that we've missed over the years, I have a list. But yeah, I really didn't hit some of those until later, and so now that's part of my passion project this year is going through and playing some of those. But yeah, for me, Legend of Dragoon and Vagrant Saga will always be permanently burned into my brain. Oh, and of course, baby's first JRPG, Pokemon.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And
I assume that'd be on somebody's list.
It's always going to be on my list. Red, blue, and yellow. And to some degree, the OG Legend of Zelda.
Is that a JRPG?
I would not.
In some aspects, I would.
That's a tough one. It's kind of a gray area. You don't. I mean, you kind of have some character progression in the sense that you collect more permanent heart containers throughout the game. It's kind of like leveling up in a sense.
I know old gaming magazines would always call Zelda an RPG, but I always thought they were dumb for doing so. That's my
it has
way in.
RPG elements. It was made in Japan.
Sure.
So
Bayonetta JRPG.
Yeah, there you go.
But it has
it's made in Japan, and you level,
it has elements of it, and that's why I said to some degree, the original Legend of Zelda.
That's true.
Okay,
I guess I don't agree.
I don't either.
That's okay.
That's fine. It's my opinion.
Brandon, what about you? What's in your list?
Have you heard of Final Fantasy?
No, what's that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely
what's better, Final Fantasy 1 or Stranger of Paradise, the prequel, the Final Fantasy 1?
I have not played it because those trailers turned me off so bad from wanting to kill Chaos that badly. Those trailers were just something else, and to me, it also came out at a time when I'm knee deep in remaking Final Fantasy 1, and I'm just completely absorbed into what that game was about and everything, and the way that the story is presented. And then Stranger Paradise got announced, and I looked at it and I said, "That's not Final Fantasy 1. What is this?" And I just dismissed
think
it.
about all the juicy lore you would have learned about the
Yeah,
secret history of Final Fantasy 1.
I've picked up some little hints here and there about some of the stuff that goes on, and it does make me curious. I might check it out at one of these days. But yeah, so Final Fantasy obviously belongs in this list, and that's most of the RPGs I've played have been kind of in the Final Fantasy universe. But there's a few notable ones that are on my list of favorites as well. Legend of Dragoon, CB mentioned, love that game. Xenogears is one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
I know, Zach, you were playing that a while back. That is such a deep game. Just the themes that are going on in that, some of the stuff that some of the places they go with that story and those characters, stuff that I've never seen in another video game, period. So, absolutely fantastic game. Chrono Trigger, obviously. Super Mario RPG. The remake came out a little while ago, so you guys have been talking about that a bit. That one was one that I played a little bit later after I was already pretty solidly into RPGs, and then kind of went back, played the original Super Mario RPG, and that's a really solid game. As far as more obscure ones that I would definitely recommend, there are at least a couple that come to mind all the time, actually, when I think about this, and they're actually some of my biggest inspirations for some of the stuff that I've done in Final Fantasy Renaissance, but also some stuff that is a big inspiration for the next project that I want to work on, which I'm still trying to kind of solidify my ideas on. But one of those games is Shining in the Darkness, which I believe was the precursor to Shining Force.
The Sega Genesis one?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's cool.
Sega Genesis, Shining in the Darkness. This is one of those games where it's definitely an RPG, and I would also refer to it as a dungeon crawler, just because of the way that the game is structured. You've got a town that you basically is like your hub. You go to the shops and buy your weapons and armor and spells and all that kind of stuff and items to then take into the dungeon. And then there's just a single dungeon that you're delving into throughout the entire game, and you get a little bit further each time and then have to go out. Like, it's one of those ones where you're kind of resource managing, because there's certain points where you might find a portal that takes you straight all the way back to the town, to the entrance of the dungeon, or you might just be exploring and getting lost, and you don't know if you're going to find a shortcut back to town or not. So at a certain point, you have to cut your losses and say, okay, I think I might have enough resources to get back to town, but if I keep going, I'm going to be stuck. And so you have to make that call and hoof it back out to town yourself. And so you're just slowly throughout the game, leveling up and acquiring more loot and better weapons and armor and spells, and getting a little bit further in the dungeon each time. And it's a really deep, like, labyrinth kind of dungeon where every floor is like a maze. It was one of those games where I don't know if I'm sure you could find this information online now, and if they've ever remade the game, they'd probably give you an in-game map. But at the time, I was drawing the entire map on paper on every single floor of that dungeon, and so I've got this notebook that shows me every floor of that dungeon. That was part of my excitement of playing that game too, just like that feeling of being the person who's discovering how to get through this place and having to record it yourself. I always thought that was cool. Another one that has a lot of similarities to that is Wizardry. I know those games go way back. The first ones were, I think, old PC or Mac games, and they had some entries on the NES as well. The one that stands out to me the most, though, was the one that I've actually played, which was on PS2. And it was just called Wizardry. It wasn't like, Wizardry 5 or 8 or something like that. It was just the PS2 version of Wizardry, and very much the same. You've got a single town with all these different places that you can go to, and then you're going into this one dungeon and just getting deeper and deeper each time. That one also had like a permadeath kind of mechanic, where if you lost a character in that dungeon and you did not get them revived in the right way within a certain amount of time, they were lost forever. So pretty brutal. But those kind of games stand out to me a lot. It's kind of like the precursor to roguelikes, right? Where it's not so much that you're going into the dungeon, you get so far each time, and then they boot you back out and give you some experience or something. It's more of a, I have to determine can I go any farther, or do I have to leave myself? But you're slowly, progressing throughout the game, getting a little bit further each time. I've always liked those a lot.
You said roguelike, but I assume you meant run-based randomizer?
Is that the name we've landed on now?
That's somebody wrote that in last week, right, Scott? Who was
I think it was David Newman.
David Newman.
RBRs.
I think I
RBR.
suggested loop progression because the loop is definitely prominent in those games.
I like that.
Yeah.
I was at home just thinking about bad names. I was like, death-utation, like deducation. You get educated through death.
Yes, that applies.
I like it.
Oh yeah. So some of us, if Brandon is done, guess I can jump in here. Obviously, Final Fantasy is a king of these, whole genre, really, right? I mean, but Final Fantasy 9, 7, 15, 13, those are all incredible games. Love them to death. Those are some of my favorites. Persona 3 and 4, of course, some of my favorites. Never did play 5. And Xenogears was really good when I played of it. I never did get through the second disc, Walls of Text, but
it's a shift.
I plan to get back there at some point, I tell myself, because I was really digging it. It's a very complex game.
I don't remember if I had warned you before you got to that point. I feel like I did, because we were talking on Discord for a little bit when you were playing that game originally, and I think I may have made sure to make you aware that the game was going to dramatically shift to less action at a certain point.
I think you definitely did. I think I just had the harebrained scheme that when I got there, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a quick break and play Vagrant Story. And then
that'd be hard to get back.
I never got back to it. But I will one day. In terms of hidden gems, I don't really feel like I have had many hidden gems. The most hidden one I can think of is playing a few hours of Shadow Hearts and really loving it. It was really cool, but then I heard it ended on a massive cliffhanger. So I needed to have Shadow Hearts Covenant as well, because I really didn't want to get there, because I played it much later. When I bought my Shadow Hearts copy of PS2, it was like $60 in the 2010s or whatever. But now Shadow Hearts Covenant is even rarer, and it's like hundreds of dollars to get a copy. So one day I'll play Shadow Hearts.
You can borrow my copy.
That's just not gonna. I can't. That's a lot of responsibility. That's quite an investment you'd be sending over to me. That's one of your kids' college tuition payments. Can't.
It's not that expensive.
But yeah, I mean, JRPGs they're just fun. Cozy little games.
Yeah.
What about you, Scott?
You guys mentioned a lot of the ones on my list. It was funny. Somebody mentioned, I think Brandon mentioned Xenosaga. I mentioned
Xenogears, but Xenosaga.
Xenogears. I'm sorry.
With that,
no. Yeah, I meant to say Xenogears, because back in the early 2000s, I was dead set on I had to own a copy of Xenogears, and I went on eBay and I bought. Even then, it was a pricey copy, for the time, and I got it, and I can't tell you when or how or why I got rid of it, but I no longer have that copy of Xenogears, and I'm really angry because that game is really valuable now.
Quick fun fact, if you don't have a copy of Xenogears and you want to check it out, if you still have a PS3, connect that thing to the network and you can download Xenogears for, I want to say like $5, maybe $10, something like that.
I think it's $6. $5.99 was a lot of the PS1 prices.
Yeah, it's available on there. At least last I checked, I downloaded a copy just in case, because I have one copy on disc it came out on PlayStation 1 originally, and I played the hell out of it. So I'm not sure if those discs are going to last much longer. You can still get it on PS3 store at least.
Good to know. You mentioned Super Mario RPG, but I wanted to give a shout out to the other Mario RPGs like Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi.
Luigi.
Mario and Luigi, like Superstar Saga.
Super Saga, it's so good. Superstar Saga.
Bowser's Inside Story. Those are all just like really clever JRPGs, and the way that you navigate the open worlds in those has just always been really clever. Like that a lot. I feel like most of the ones I've played are widely known. I love Earthbound so much. That game is so quirky and weird, and I absolutely love it. Lost Odyssey. I was surprised nobody mentioned that one. I love Lost Odyssey, although I will admit I never finished it because I hit a grind wall. But
Yeah.
what a beautiful.
I never played that
beautiful
one,
game.
and I don't think you can find it anywhere now, can you?
Which one?
Lost Odyssey?
It's on Xbox.
It was on
Or did it-
it was a physical.
Yeah,
Mhm.
There was a
physical
it was-
copies.
I think it had
And
4
you-
discs. Didn't
I
it?
don't have an
I-
Xbox,
I-
but I typically play those kind of games on my PC because a lot of the Xbox games you can play on PC anyway. But I don't think I was able to find that one for PC. Like, I don't think it's on Steam or anything like that.
No, I think that was an
Yeah.
Xbox 360 exclusive,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I do love that everyone I know stopped at the same boss fight, though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's such a sharp difficulty spike.
Yeah. And one that nobody mentioned, so I'm worried that it doesn't count as a JRPG, but Parasite Eve,
Oh, good one.
that's a
Yeah,
Yeah, I
It
would,
may-
isn't it?
I would count it.
It
It's
may
got
come
the
up in a
elements.
conversation here in a moment.
it's definitely more JRPG than The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, right.
I would say so. You don't have a party of characters, but I would argue you don't have to for it to be an RPG. But yeah, it definitely had a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of RPG elements.
So
Great
those
game.
are and go ahead.
I was gonna say a shout out to Resonance of Fate, PS3 and I think 360 JRPG, where it was very focused on gun battles and positioning,
Mm.
and it was cool because most of your attacks changed your position, which I thought was interesting for a grid based strategy game like that. So
Yeah.
you would always be cognizant of your motion. Oh, dude! Oh my god! I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't mean to hijack this.
You're good,
here.
man.
Do you remember Eternal Sonata?
Yep.
I remember the title. I've never played it.
Remember in 360, an entire JRPG set in the dying dreams of Frederick Francois Chopin.
Oh wow,
The
No
composer.
way.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that about it.
I didn't either.
that-
Now I have to play that game.
I have a copy.
Well, I could have sworn it was in the trailers. I apologize if it was not, but if it is not in the trailer, it is revealed in the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Which of course is no excuse for a spoiler, but I could have swore that was part of the selling point, that it is just it's this fantasy world in Chopin's head. Because he's a character in it, but he's aware that he's dreaming, but everyone else like, no, dude, we live here.
so
Like it's
there's got to
it's
be a
kind of
ton
a-
of his music in the game, I assume.
Yes, yeah. Chopin's music is a huge part of the game, and it's kind of interesting because the whole time it is like, is Chopin being transported to a different world he doesn't know about, or is it really his dream? Is kind of the push and pull of the story,
Oh.
because he's convinced he's just in his dream, and everyone else is like, well, then why do I remember being a kid? And he's just like, because I have a very thorough imagination.
Is
Right,
it pronounced
it's very-
Chopin? I've been pronouncing it
Chopin.
Chopin my entire life.
Chopin.
No, no,
I've heard it both
that game
ways.
says Chopin about 1900 times, so
Ah.
I guess Chopin got stuck in my head. But yeah, it is. What an interesting game, and everybody's named after music. Like the main character's name is Allegretto, and your main love interest is named Polka.
Nice.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's a very cute game. Shout out to Eternal Sonata.
All right. The only
And shout out to the most bizarre credits in history. This is not a spoiler. Where all of the characters, as the credits will play, just talk to you through the screen and talk to you about how important your friends are to you. And it's just 15 minutes. These characters are saying, "Remember to go out and hang out with your friend. Have you talked to your buddy lately? He probably misses you."
after you played a 60-hour JRPG.
Yeah, it's really
like
weird.
go outside, kid.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of. Yeah, I guess it is kind of what I was saying.
In terms of like hidden gem ones for me, I like I said, I played mostly widely popular ones, but the first one I ever played, I feel like nobody's ever heard of, is RoboTrek on the Super Nintendo. If you haven't played that one, go check out that one for the music alone. And that I did a Patreon episode with Kevin on that one. You can hear us talk about it. That game is, obviously I'm a little biased because it's the first one I ever played, but it's so good. It's just such a great game. You play as an inventor, and instead of actually fighting yourself, you build robots, and it's like a grid-based JRPG. Like it's all about positioning behind your enemies, and you have to get all this gear and shields and swords and everything, and that music will be stuck in your head for forever, but in a good way.
See, dude, I think that's another reason JRPGs stand out to me is because while a lot of them are turn-based, they always do their own little spin or flair to it.
Yeah.
So you're always
Final Fantasy was about limit breaks. You know
right.
what I mean?
You're always getting some a little new, some a little
Yeah.
fresh spin on
Well,
things.
the Final Fantasy games specifically, they're kind of part of their claim to fame is that every new entry they kind of invent, like they reinvent themselves. They come up with whole new
Yeah.
mechanics and kind of spearhead the genre in that way. Like everyone else is kind of like copying Final Fantasy's ideas.
Yeah.
Controversial draw systems included.
Yeah. Why didn't that show up in any other games?
because Scott and I were the only ones who liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. I gotta go back to my playthrough of that game because I was playing that for a while and I really enjoyed it, but now I forgot how to play. So start all over again. But any that you guys have missed?
Come back to you.
Yeah, right. Any that you've missed over the years that you regret not playing, Brandon?
Oh man, don't have an answer ready for this one, but I'm sure there are.
That's all right. We can come back to you.
I mean, I suppose off the top of my head, the first one I can think of is I played the original Valkyrie Profile when that came out, and that was a really great game. That's another one of those that's rare and hard to find, probably kind of pricey now. I never played the second one. I've heard it was pretty good. That's one.
All right.
Did you play Elysium, the most recent one?
No, because I didn't play the second one, so I want to skip ahead.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I also think that game came out during the time when Square Enix like released 12 JRPGs back to back for whatever reason. Whatever. Those fools.
Zach, what about you?
The Valkyrie Profile games would definitely be on my list. A cool little, Norse spin on it, which I guess was novel back then and is now pretty basic these days. But Xenosaga, the games I've always wanted to play. But they were hard to find even when they were coming out. I feel like the big follow up to Xenogears was supposed to be 6 games. They had to cut it down to 3.
Yeah, I thought I heard it was supposed to be 5 originally, but yeah, they had to condense it. It made that third game epic as hell though, because you could tell that they were trying to pace it for like a much longer saga in the first 2, and then the third game they're like, oh well, this is it, okay, and then you just crammed everything into it. It was wild.
Yeah. So I've always been interested in those. I've never played a Dragon Quest game.
Me either. That's on my list.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest 8.
Wow, really, Brandon? Not you either.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Everyone just would rave about Dragon Quest 8, and the box art looks incredible. And I was like, I have to play that game, and I just never did.
I really want to play Dragon.
I was going to say, it's funny because you own 1 through 4.
I own 1 through 4
on NES.
Yeah, Dragon Warrior 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, Warrior, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because they changed the name for the American audience. Is that?
Yeah, there's quite a few of the NES games that happened to.
Americans don't want to quest; they want to be warriors.
Is that what it was?
Yeah,
it's the only thing I can think of. But yeah. So Dragon Quest 11 specifically, I really want to check out. That's the most recent one, but it looks really cool. But it is also apparently 150 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that it just be what it be.
Going way more recent, I definitely want to play Baldur's Gate 3. That's really high on my list. So maybe after FF7 Rebirth.
So saucy,
so good, man.
Yeah,
I want to be playing it right.
Amazing.
I like I said, I did like a 7-hour session this morning, and I didn't want to quit. I haven't done that in a long time. Like, I want to be playing that game right now. Anyway,
I'm gonna say Persona 5 on this list because I never did play it because it came out right alongside Breath of the Wild and Nier Automata, 2 games I was already putting hundreds of hours into.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know if I have another one in me. And then shortly after that, I started on the podcast. Here.
Sorry.
So no, I'm just saying. I definitely had that fever if I got to keep up with every new release, for years. So it's hard to find the time back. So Persona 5 is a big one. I feel like Wild Arms, because that's a JRPG with some Wild West flavor. Yeah.
That's another one that the cover just totally intrigued me because it was a JRPG, but it wasn't about magic and stuff. You know what I mean? It wasn't medieval or whatever.
Right. Yeah, which is rare.
Steampunk.
Or I guess it was rare back then. Yeah. I think their guns are magic or something in that series. I'm not sure, but the box art of each one of them I always thought was so striking.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. CB had mentioned Vagrant Story earlier. That's another one I have not played, and I've only heard amazing things about it. It also is kind of sort of related to the world of Final Fantasy Tactics. It's supposed to take place, I think, in the same world of Ivalice, but I've heard that it's kind of the same world, but it's kind of not exactly like canonically connected, but it borrows a lot of themes and stuff.
It depends on who you talk to, because some do say that it is canonically connected because there is some direct crossover.
Okay.
Well, the director says so, and I think he also claims that 12 is part of the same.
Yeah, 12 was supposed to
Ivalice
be
world.
Ivalice as well. Final Fantasy 12.
But I only played a few hours of Final Fantasy Tactics because the game made me feel really stupid in a world a way I don't often feel. The writing was so good. But I do feel like Vagrant Story does make some references to it. So I think they are in the same world, just so far apart that it doesn't matter.
Right, exactly.
timeline-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Final Fantasy Tactics is another one I would love to finish that at some point because the writing is impeccable.
Yeah. That was a great game, and that was for the time especially. It was a rare occasion in video games or in RPGs at least where they're really not afraid to just kill people, and there's a lot of murder and backstabbing and blood, actual blood, in a what was it, rated T probably game at the time. So pretty cool.
And a whole lot of down with the ruling class
Oh, yeah.
energy, which I appreciate. Yeah.
All right, CB, I know you got a long list, so let's.
Ooh, don't worry, I'm going to rapid fire a lot of these off. So,
Okay.
Kudelka,
Oh yeah, the pre-Shadow Hearts.
yeah. Threads of Fate, Lunar, never touched Lunar.
Lunar's a good one.
Yeah, and I own all of them. Breath of Fire,
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Cardia.
Oh, Karsha. I never knew if it was Karsha or Cardia, but that was one I almost mentioned too. Yeah, that was a really good one.
The entire Suikoden saga.
Sure. Well, you're in a chance. The remakes.
All of them already. That's why I said like this year's going to be a busy year for me. Oh god, there was Ark the Lad. So
dude, you know what? You reminded me. Ys. I've always wanted to play the Ys games.
Yep. Ys is on there. Grand Stream Saga. Panzer Dragoon.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, Panzer Dragoon Saga, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I just need to learn to shell out some money for that. That's one of the few ones I don't have.
Yeah.
And Thousand Arms.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I said I'll that's what I said I'll like rapid fire those off. And Parasite Eve.
Parasite Eve. Yeah. For me, you already mentioned Dragon Quest VIII. I will also add, actually, sorry, Brandon, but most of the Final Fantasy games, I played 7, 8, 13, 15, and 16, and all the others I've missed, not because I just never got around to them, but the top one on there, just because of Zach's love for it, is going to be Final Fantasy IX.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go. I own it. I need to go back and finish it. I've almost bought it on Switch, just because I thought that would be a good one to, that's a great console game I can take with me wherever.
It's a very accessible game. It's a good one for anyone that's, if they want to jump into the series, if they're new to the series, 9's a really great starting point.
Okay. Also, Lufia and Lufia 2 in particular, Super Nintendo.
For your buddy Chad Cusick's
favorite
game.
He raves about that game. It's his favorite game of all time, and I've never played it. I need to get around to that.
Yes, it's our buddy Chad. Sorry,
our buddy Chad. Sorry.
Yeah.
Live Alive, that
Yeah.
one on Switch that you played a while back. I never played that one, but the big one that I never got around to playing, and I don't even know if you consider these games JRPGs or not, but Secret of Mana and Secret of
absolutely.
Evermore.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
They weren't really turn-based though, were they? Weren't they more action?
Well, Final Fantasy VII Remake's not turn-based.
That's true. But those two games have eluded me, and I started Secret of Mana like on an emulator when I was younger, and I got distracted and never went back to it. And Secret of Evermore, that box art alone for that game just makes me want to play that game and see what it's all about.
I picked that one up a long time ago from like a used game store for that very reason, because the box art looks amazing, and I've still never even fired it up yet.
Yeah. It's I want to remedy that one because it looks so cool. So anyway, that was our thoughts on JRPGs. We're gonna go to the community now. We're gonna start over on Facebook, and I'm gonna kick things off with a comment from Aaron Hughes, because when I posted on social media, I let everybody know that Brandon was gonna be here as a special guest, and the very first comment comes from Aaron Hughes II, and he says, in regards to Brandon, such a great human being. I enjoyed every moment I got to spend chatting with him at R2V2 and continue to wish him the very best in all of his endeavors. Renaissance is amazing. I can't wait to see more of his projects in the future. Also, turn-based RPGs are the best. and the action RPG BS as of late still doesn't sit right with me in the Final Fantasy space. You'll never change my mind. Sorry, not sorry.
Road Trip was
He must
amazing.
Well, Road Trip was amazing, absolutely. Bachelor Road Trip, but he must hate FF16 then, because that's not that. I wouldn't even use the word RPG for that one.
That's very action based.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a straight up Devil May Cry.
By the way, thank you, Aaron. Thank you for the kind words. It was cool hanging out with you too.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun at R2V too. Zach, you want to go with the next one?
Sure, jumping over to Discord, Mark Zamansky writes in, referring to This Way Madness Lies in his comment. I avoided turn-based games since the beginning. They didn't appeal to me, and when I did try one, I found it dull. Some of them are very long, too. Recently, I tried one to see if I felt the same, the Shakespeare one, that's This Way Madness Lies, and liked it very much. Since I trust this podcast, please mention some great ones.
Oh, we just did.
A lot.
A bunch of them, yeah, that's true.
Just
But none of them are going to be as short as This Way Madness Lies.
Yeah, that's probably the appeal for him on that one. It's going to be tricky finding a short JRPG.
I mean, and to his point, JRPGs, they tend to show you all their tricks pretty early on. So it's rare to find one that, is 60 hours and gives you fresh things along the way.
Right. Yeah.
So I get it. Yeah, you're either going to have to find yourself invested in the story or you'll probably bounce out.
I'd say, Mark, if you wanted to try one that we haven't recommended, because we didn't really get into specifics about what made them awesome, but I'd say Chrono Trigger is a pretty accessible JRPG. It starts out pretty simply, and it's easy to get into. So that one
the PS1 version.
You think so? Over the Super Nintendo?
PS1 version
Yes.
has some long load times.
Yeah, it
like,
does.
That
The
stands out
PS1,
to me.
Well-
hard no on the PS1 version.
There,
Yeah.
They added
okay,
cutscenes, that
then
was cool.
play the
Yeah.
but then play the DS version, which is a direct
Sure.
port of it. But
Yeah.
I always refer to it as the PS1 version because it has cutscenes and things.
Oh, I see.
I don't know. Where would he play that? Is that on?
It's on DS.
Where would Where would a modern audience easily access Chrono Trigger?
I mean, you can go on eBay and buy the DS version of it.
Is it not on
Yeah,
Steam?
but he doesn't. What are the chances of him
Where-
having a DS?
Where would
is
a
the point.
modern audience easily access Chrono
CB
Trigger?
doesn't live in the modern era.
To be fair, it's going to be easier to play the DS version than the Super Nintendo version, which is getting very
Sure.
expensive.
Did they not port
but is
Chrono
it-
Trigger to PC at some point? Is it not on Steam? I thought maybe it was.
I
They
think
did
it is
it.
on Steam.
I heard it was terrible.
Oh.
I thought it was like isn't that the one that was a bad port?
Yeah, I think it's a jank port.
Wow.
That's one because they redid the sprite work and everybody was upset,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
text, of course, is garbage. But
That's why I
Yeah.
said like your most realistic way to play it is the DS version.
although ignorance is bliss, he's not going to know the differences in Chrono Trigger.
That's
so he
true.
could probably just pick up the Steam version.
Except like the
it, man.
Yeah, or
You
you
do,
can
do.
seal it.
Yeah.
Whatever makes you feel better.
thievery.
Brandon, you
We're
want
not
to take
making it easy for you?
take the next comment from Rex? He's a buddy of mine from Rotten
All
Tomatoes.
right, this is a long one. He says, I really liked Gears Tactics as a TBS turn-based strategy.
Turn-based strategy. Yeah.
That's the answer, I guess.
It's based on the Gears of War universe, and the camera work in that game is fabulously fun. Snipers take out people's heads, and killing a downed enemy is very satisfying. When you down an enemy and kill them with a curb stomp, etc., that's brutal. When you do that, everybody else on the squad gets an extra action point. Yay! I added the yay. This encourages you to do some moves that might otherwise be seen as too risky. Oh, and those grenades chunkify groups of incoming wretches in such a satisfying way. I do worry about recommending the game to you because it may be a tad too long, but it's super satisfying and not overly technical. There's no base building stuff that you find in XCOM games, just tactics missions and leveling up your characters. He also says, stay away from Phoenix Point. That was very long and not nearly as satisfying as Gears Tactics. Also, if you're going to reply to this post, please at me. I'm not on the server much, but I'm here now and very curious about the Shakespeare TBS game. Another person mentioned.
Yeah. Rex is an
I do
old
wanna-
buddy of mine. Do we consider XCOM games JRPGs?
No, and he didn't cite it. He was just talking about turn-based strategy game. So I guess it's probably not a JRPG, but
Yeah.
I do want to play Gears Tactics. The
Yeah.
only thing that turned me off was when it looked awesome and then they put out that trailer with like over 60 hours of content. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Why?
It's a tad long.
That's longer than every other Gears of War game put together.
That's
Right.
some good bulk right there.
I still want you to play the
know.
Alien Tactics game, Zach.
I'll probably play Gears before I do Alien because Gears is awesome.
I hear 60-hour
Absolutely.
RPG, and I immediately translate that into 120 hours for me because it takes me about
Right?
twice as long to play every game because I want to get everything. I'm like Scott in that regard. I have to collect everything, and if you tell me to go here, I'm going to go all the other places first, just because I want to see
Yep.
what you're telling me not to go to yet.
Every game.
Yep.
Game tells me go this direction, go the opposite. Just to see
100%.
what I can get. Yeah.
Thomas
Yeah.
Bex writes in, I love turn-based RPGs. It's a perfect combo of story, action, and replayability because it is turn-based. It allows me to really think about my next step that removes the stress of having to react in the moment. I can take a break whenever I want and reassess the situation or just go to the bathroom. I love the original Fallout games, for instance. When you guys were talking about like planning ahead and everything, my brain always goes to those moments where you know it's like a really long fight, and you get to that point where you know you're absolutely screwed, and you're like, I don't want to have to do this fight again.
Yeah.
but there are moments where you can turn that around.
There are, but when you're like, I'm out of Phoenix Downs, and 2 of my characters are down, and I'm at 10% health, and I'm out of mana, and I have no elixirs.
But it's
I'm
also fun
screwed.
to go into that battle again with a completely different perspective and strategy. That was kind of the fun. It's like, I'm going to work this a completely different way and see if this works. And then when it does, it feels great.
Yeah, except when the RNG of damage decides, like, I'm just going to screw you right now.
Yeah.
Or you think you finally are about to win the match and then your attack misses.
Yeah.
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 Those hurt
That's always brutal.
a lot in Baldur's Gate, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
my God.
You're just like, oh, he's down to his last hit point, but I'm also down to mine. Miss.
And I don't know why, but attacks in Baldur's Gate feel more valuable than they do in JRPGs. Like, if you miss in Baldur's Gate, it's like, oh, I'm screwed.
Dude,
this is going to happen.
You gotta learn to really start using and abusing those potions where you're like, get an extra +2 initiative.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Kevin Honigford, our producer, writes in and says, turn-based RPGs are my favorite. I'd give anything for a AAA quality one like what we had when Final Fantasy X came out. I love being able to think through encounters and fights, and the stories they tell are quite often some of the best of what's out there. In my book, Grandia 2 is the best game in this genre. It's my number 1 of all time, although I'm still trying to figure out if it's being dethroned by Baldur's Gate 3. Lots of games have taken bits and pieces from it, but nothing has quite captured the intrigue and excitement of those turn-based battles. I still make a point to play this game annually around every fall.
Wow.
Kevin had me play this game for a Patreon episode, and it is a delightful game. It's not super difficult. I feel like you can, you don't even have to do any grinding. If you just fight every enemy that's on the way, you're going to be completely fine. But the strategies and the boss battles are really fun, and you would really like the writing in that game, Zach. I think the dialogue in that game is really well done.
Where did you play it? Did you emulate it?
No, I played it on Switch. They have the
Oh, okay.
they have like 1 and 2 as a combo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll put that on my eShop wish list.
Yeah, it's I haven't played the first one yet, but he told me to start with the second one because he said it was the better game, and it's delightful. There's a moment in that game too that has that it's an older, I think it was a Dreamcast game originally, if I'm not mistaken. I think, but there's a moment where you have this awesome cutscene like Final Fantasy VII did. Remember how awesome those cutscenes felt back in the day?
Because you would watch them and say, man, I wish games could look this good ever.
Right. And there's a moment like that in Grandia 2, but it still looks really cool. It doesn't look, I mean, it looks dated, but it doesn't look as dated as the Final Fantasy VII ones do. That sounds possible, but it was really cool.
Sure, so, I don't think I realized or remembered that Grandia 2 was Kevin's favorite game of all time.
Yeah, he loves that game.
Grandia 2 specifically.
All right, we're going to move on to TikTok. We got some comments over there as well. Zach, you're up.
Sure, Old Fool Gamer wrote into the original Phantasy Star on Master System started my love. Xenogears, Xenosaga, and Xenoblade Chronicles would top my faves. So that's so he's a big sci-fi JRPG fan.
Yeah,
I'm learning. That first Xenoblade Chronicles was awesome. I didn't need any more Xenoblade Chronicles afterwards, but the first one was
I'm
great.
not a fan.
Oh, okay.
I did not like
Sorry.
those games. I think part of it was because I went into it expecting something more like Xenogears, and those are not Xenogears.
It is definitely not that. The setting was cool, where the whole civilization is on the back of these two dead giants.
The world stuff was, it was an interesting concept.
Yeah.
As I got into that game, I was ready for it to be done.
There was a game where I would turn down the characters' voices.
Oh God, yes.
In between story, because they just shout the entire combat.
Oh yeah, I had to turn them all off. It was driving me crazy.
It's Rhine time, he says every time he attacks.
Let's not lose our heads.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. I will say I
brutal.
do love, in a lot of modern games like this, you can leave the music up, turn the voices down, but also leave. Like the fact that you can I just don't want to hear them talk. Gone.
It is nice. You're right.
Which is funny because all we wanted was real voice acting in video games when we were younger, and now we're turning them down.
It's a real monkey's paw scenario. We wanted voiced characters, but we didn't know they wouldn't shut up.
Right.
Most games are not that bad about it, but there's a few where it does get on your nerves.
Brandy, you want to take the next one?
All right. What is this person's handle? Captain D. Hankland? Is that how you would say that?
Sure.
Captain D. Hankland?
Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine.
Captain Dankland.
He or she says, Final Fantasy VII, one of my favorite JRPGs. I played Chrono Trigger and almost every Final Fantasy since. I see they may rework FF8 in Remain. I'm not sure what he's trying to say. May rework FF8 and no longer make it turn-based. I think I've heard rumors to that effect as well. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. I guess it depends on how well FF7 Remake does, probably.
It's going to do great.
That'd be cool. I'd be all for it. FF8 was a fun game, but as we've alluded to earlier, it had some systems and mechanics in it that were either controversial or just kind of poorly thought out. So it would be interesting to see a remade version of that game.
Well, the hints in Remake and in the demo for Rebirth make me think it's going to happen.
Oh, okay.
I just want to play the card game more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What was that? That wasn't Triple Triad, was it?
Triad.
Yeah, Triple Triad. That was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tetramaster and FF9.
Yes.
Whatever happened? You guys remember that NVIDIA leak years ago? And every game in it came true except for the Final Fantasy IX remake that was listed there. What the hell happened to that?
I don't know.
Fumble.
Because you don't need to do it. It would look goofy if you tried to make it look as pretty as FF7.
Yeah,
because everything is so cartoony
in
that world. But they should get on that.
All right, CB.
I want Zidane to have a voice.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen, Zach. Jared writes in, Chrono Cross and Final Fantasy VII are my favorites.
I knew those would get read a lot.
You didn't mention Chrono Cross. Chrono Trigger gets mentioned a lot, but Chrono Cross was a really good game.
That's another one I missed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, didn't play that one. And they remade it, wasn't it Chrono Cross?
Yeah, they came to the Switch, I think, and they added something to it.
Yeah, Radical Dreamers, the text, the visual novel between Trigger and Cross. Oh. Yeah,
I've heard the music is outstanding in Chrono Cross. I can't speak to it, but I've just heard
been pretty solid.
I do want to play Chrono Cross. I want to watch them kill all the Chrono Trigger characters.
Kyler,
which I think have.
Kyler writes in and says Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy III on the SNES was special and maintains my number one all-time spot for this genre. Man, what a special game
That's a good pick.
That was. We've talked about that one at length on Patreon, but the overworld music alone is just so good. And that opening scene with the Magitech armor is just walking through the snow towards Narsha, I think was the name of the city. I was just so beautiful.
That artwork of the armor still to this day.
Yeah, that Magitech armor that they ride in. And just the title screen of that game was iconic too. I think the title screen comes up right after you get that little intro section where they're walking to the town. And it just takes you that black screen where the words Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 3 at the time is what it was on the SNES, but you see those words just kind of come down from the top of the screen with this really ominous choral music. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so dark and foreboding. It really stands out among all the games in the series.
Good. Who's up, Zach?
Sure. Somebody wrote in Phantasy Star 2 on Dreamcast was their first ever JRPG.
Yeah, that's my bad.
But,
Sorry, whoever that was. I accidentally erased your name. I didn't mean to.
I really should play Phantasy Stars at some point. And then finally, we have Gearbox.
Randy Pitchford himself.
Gearbox wrote in. Absolutely do. I'm too dumb to use RPG Maker. I've tried, but I've always wanted to write one.
Fun fact,
By the way,
there was an RPG Maker on PlayStation 1, and that was where I made my first RPG.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, it took me 7 memory cards to fit that game onto. I managed to
Oh my god!
I managed to figure out a way to basically string along all the data from the game from one set of memory cards to another set of memory cards, because one set of memory cards was not enough to hold everything I wanted to do in that game.
That's crazy.
I loved those Maker games. Like I still have the RPG Maker, and I have Fighter Maker. Fighter Maker was a lot of fun to toy around with.
Just like a 2D fighting game stuff?
3D.
Oh, it's 3D. Okay. Saw that.
So yeah, you could actually like craft your entire character model.
By the way, that person that wrote in about Phantasy Star 2 was Kenneth Alsop. My apologies, Kenneth, for not getting that out for you right away, but I made a mistake. I apologize. And
the first one you've ever made, so good.
Yeah, right.
Not bad.
That was our topic. That was a lot of fun, Brandon. Thanks so much for being here for that. That was I had so much fun talking about it.
Anytime you say Final Fantasy, I'll show up. So,
all right.
Thank you for having me.
We do have a special guest next week as well. We keep talking about it every Game of the Year episode that we're going to have Grant Henry on a regular episode, and we're finally going to do it because we're going to talk about music in video games because he's done it. He actually writes and performs music for video games. So we're going to pick his brain a little bit and talk about some of our favorite songs and soundtracks from video games. So stay tuned for that next week. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Gaming Outsider. Brandon, thanks so much for being our guest, man. It was awesome chatting with you as always.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you a million for having me.
Yeah. And where can our listeners follow you and your work, especially if they want to play Final Fantasy Renaissance?
Yes. So if you want to play Final Fantasy Renaissance, I do provide links for that on my Discord server. I don't put it on my website or on any major social media stuff just because I don't want to be accused of mass distributing this game. But you can get a copy if you join the Discord server. That's also where I post. I'm pretty active on there, and we've got a pretty good community of people. Like I said, we've got thousands strong now at this point who are playing the game and loving it. And people are always around to help out if you got questions, especially if you're new to Final Fantasy 1, because it's very much the original game, just with some added stuff to it. And there's a lot of knowledgeable people on there. So the Discord server, it's called Final Fantasy Renaissance Project. I don't have the exact invite link that I can read off to you right now, but look for Final Fantasy Renaissance and you should find it. I'm on Facebook as Renaissance Games. It might be Ren Games or Ren Games LLC on there, and same thing on Twitter. And those are most of the places that you can find me. You can also go to FinalFantasyRenaissance.com. That'll take you straight to my website and the page about the game.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. It is. I hope people check it out because it's what you've done is really, really quite special. Thanks to all of you out there for listening. This episode of The Gaming Outsider was produced by Kevin Honigford, and all the music you hear is written and performed by Grant Henry of Stemage and Metroid Metal. His website, as always, is stemagemusic.com. Please be sure to email us if you have any questions or concerns. Our address is feedback@thegamingoutsider.com. Zach, any parting words or recommendations for our listeners?
I really don't. The past few weeks, I've just been hiking, watching Longmire, and playing video games.
All right.
That's been my life.
CB, how about you?
Well, still working on my Laserdisc project, getting those all together. But in Zach's honor, I watched a Western.
Oh, really? What'd you watch?
Quite possibly the greatest Western of all time, even though I've seen it like 100 times.
Silverado?
Tombstone.
Tombstone's very good. Absolutely.
So
Great movie.
I watched that, and then I also have a don't watch it because it's utterly it's an atrocity. The 1970s King Kong with Jeff Bridges.
Okay.
I
Okay.
forgot how bad that was. That movie is awful.
I didn't even know that was a thing, honestly.
Ooh, do not watch.
I don't remember it being great, but I don't remember it being wretched either.
Oh, God. If you watch it nowadays, just a lot of creepy, horny monkey staring.
Wait, what?
Dude, it's
That's King Kong for you.
oh yeah, but this is
He's grabbing those ladies for
Wretched.
a reason.
Yeah.
Brandon, you got anything you want to throw out non-game related?
I don't think so. I've been completely consumed in Final Fantasy Renaissance stuff, and like I said, playing Fire Emblem feverishly, trying to get ready for the FF7 rebirth in a couple weeks. I think I really have anything else much to add.
All right. I don't know if I considered a recommendation, but I guess more of a question for Zach, because I'm reading The Dark Tower, or listening to The Dark Tower by Stephen King.
The Gunslinger, presumably the first one.
Yeah, does this pick up at all?
No, nope, it does not.
I don't even really know what's going on. Like, there's like, I don't know why he's going after the Man in Black. I don't know.
Correct. I mean, you're not supposed to yet.
Okay.
It's a slow burn. Yeah.
Does it resolve at the end? Because I got about 4 hours left, and I'm like, man, there's 8 more books of this.
I think the payoff of the first book is worth the journey.
Okay.
Yes. But because it is like, what is it, like a 7.5 hour, 8 hour audiobook?
Yeah.
Which is pretty short for an audiobook.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would say it's worth sticking out, see if you like it or not.
Okay.
From judge it more based on the ending, because that's what I thought I got really interesting. I was enjoying the ride just because it felt like Roland was just kind of walking through like an actual nightmare. Like it kind of felt a lot of dream logic.
Yeah.
So it worked for me. But
okay.
But yeah. But no, if you're thinking about the pacing, it does not pick up in this book. The second book is much faster paced.
Okay. Fair enough. I will give it another shake. Looking forward to it. I like his writing in terms of, I like his characters. Like, he writes characters very well, and I kind of want to just go check out some of the other Stephen King stuff.
Hearts in Atlantis.
Yeah. So
Hearts in Atlantis is phenomenal.
His writing irks me because I do kind of like his characters and that he's willing to go to weird or taboo subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I also hate his writing because he'll tell you about every crack in the belt of Roland's, belt that he's wearing or whatever. It's like, I don't need this much information.
Right.
Yeah.
I get you. I guess I'll report back. I should have it finished by next week. It's, like I said, it's only 4 hours left. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody once again. Until next week, I'm Scott Clark with Zach Parkerson and Chris Behrensmeyer, and we are The Gaming Outsider. Remember, there's no such thing as a bad game, just games that aren't for you.